Hello, interwebs. This is Buckland RPG. We're doing a fireside chat today to go over some of the characters of Arhor'ha. Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. Yes'm. We are either doing fireside chats, we're doing one-shots, campaigns. We're full swing onto the season. I have fixed the donation tracker. I was staring at it at negative several days to go, like I don't know how to math. We have a good kickoff there. We have our beautiful fireplace that should be ad-free. It hasn't had a problem last time. That was kind of weird.
What problem?
So when we first did a fireside chat, this beautiful like Yule log thing that I believe you found, I was like, oh, here's the Yule log. And it's so relaxing. I'm just staring at it right now. But it had ads. Cause it's off of YouTube for those that are horribly curious where I got this from. It's just streaming from a YouTube. That's like 12 hours of this log burning. But it has this nice crackle to it. It's a nice good flame. It's unseasonably warm where I am right now, so it kind of feels a little off. But it was snowing like a week ago, so maybe not.
Yeah. If you... Never mind. Are you still getting ads on that thing, though, still?
I'm not. It stopped. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I know that if push come to shove, that there are accounts that I could use. Plus, I have that, that FU money, so I could just buy a YouTube account. But yeah, humble brag. So for today, what we're gonna do is go through characters of Arhor'ha as much as it pertains to the upcoming season. But this world's been around for quite some time. There are lots of people that are joining for the first time or going in. Like everyone here, with I believe the exception of Alexa, has had a moment in their time here at the community. Like, oh, who are these people? Or kind of lost. And there's no expectation that people know everything. But there are some, if you've been alive as a character or wants to get in the hype as a out of character, like some people to be aware of, so you can share in the excitement. Like, oh, why is this person important? Why should I care? You're welcome to develop your own opinions on them, sure. But notice when people start like squealing over like.
Well,
gig,
and your opinion can change.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I feel personally attacked.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I also
Madam
will say
draws
that,
shirtless pictures of guys. What?
That the more that certain people and intrigues like plots. They're really shaped by the players. I know that at the end of the day, there's a lot of the DM puts a module down or puts your thing down for you, and you're just there to enjoy the carnival. But one thing that we do very different is that while we're constructing the carnival, we have the players involved. We tailor it around the plots, around their personal stories, and then integrate them in with stories of the world. So that's not this complete disconnect from what a player is experiencing, what a character is doing with their experience, and something else in the world. Now, that said, there's some places where things don't cross over, and that's where the opportunity for people to get interested is, because they'll take Sin and Alexa. Alexa might not be terribly involved with the dealings of a Seek Out Freeport, but Sin is, and now suddenly Alexa's more invested because Sin is.
Yep.
And vice versa, like the idea of gig, which is a good top up. I will not be moderating for this. Alexa, who is very, very good at keeping things on task, on topic, and slightly less rambly than I am, will be keeping things moderated. Also, I probably will have to hop in on a few of the topics, especially the non-player characters, or fill in gaps. So I will shoot to be as quiet as possible. I know that's going to be a DC like 18 check, but I will attempt it. I will still roll said dice. That said, we're doing a little FYI for our community, because anyone is welcome to join in to discuss. If you're currently watching a stream, feel free to add in with the chat, like, hey, I want to know about such and such, and we will put it into conversation. That said, I'll stop talking, and I'll hand it off to Alexa.
Absolutely. So for the start, I figured we would start with the one, the only gig. We're always trying to think of every time that someone asks about a character, they almost always ask about Gig. And our response for the most part has been, you have to experience him to understand him. But I feel like we should maybe give a little bit more context going to him. There's a lot to go there, so I know this conversation alone could probably take up like 5 hours. We're going to try to whittle that down a little bit. Let's see. There's a couple places I can go to about the origination of Gig. The biggest, I know I always kind of put in, like, here's a general understanding of who Gig is. So I'll do a brief, this is who he is in, like, the technical terms, and then I'm going to switch over to Ode and Sin to kind of fill in the gaps of, more of their experiences with him. So, Gig is part of Gigareth, who is a devil who was fabled to support the whole entire continent of Arhor'ha that we are playing on. Gigareth was essentially contained by Targ the dragon, and there was essentially like a wager or a agreement created that Targ and representations of Targ and Gigareth would battle every so often, depending on, if all the stars aligned for that to be the right time. Targrin, thank you. For the stars to align, essentially, and whoever won, that would decide if, Gigareth would be released and have his reign given back to him from the world. Now, there was a group that was tasked with doing this battle on both sides, and they decided that they wanted to try to avoid this. They didn't want to have this huge battle that essentially takes its toll on Arhor'ha. There's a whole bunch of imbalance that happens, so they were trying to avoid that as much as possible. So they had the idea of, devils are fallen celestials. They are fallen angels, essentially. So what if they were able to remove the celestial portion and make it so that maybe that part of Gigareth could find a solution? So that really just gives an idea of like what the mindset behind it was. So they created Gig. So they, rather than doing this great big battle, they worked together to pull out the celestial portion, and that created Gig. And Reth is now the full pure devil form that is now still contained. Gig was, he wanted to build things. He wanted to have a life where he was protecting the people in Freeport, protecting the tieflings, and the kind of life that was created there. But unfortunately, elves found him to be a threat because, as being, half of the world, he is a huge threat. He could build these things that they couldn't control. So they decided that they would try to destroy him before he could become a bigger threat. It's always the idea of, like, if you could kill baby Hitler, would you kill baby Hitler? That was essentially the conundrum presented to them. Like, would you kill a baby Gig? Now, unfortunately, this goes a little bit further into lore, which I won't go as deep now. So they essentially attempted to destroy him, and because of this action, it led to the Gig that we know now, where he had all good intentions ahead of time, but now he has turned more chaotic, because he has been essentially tainted by the world and seen what people's actions are and where their intentions lead. So Gig is kind of now that reaction has led him to where he is now. So I'm going to go to Sin and Ode, who can fill in. That's essentially the origins of Gig. Now you guys have had more experience with the Gig now. So whoever would like to speak first, tell me about like your experience with Gig. Like, who do you think he is, and kind of your interactions with him?
You want to go first?
No, you go first.
Sorry, I spoke a lot, but I figured that's important to know his origin story.
I mean, hey, Owen.
Yes.
Well, he's crazy, right? Like, he's pretty crazy. Wow, I'm really bad at this. Like, what am I supposed to? What am I supposed to?
All right, I'll go. Let me go a little
Just
bit
go-
more.
Talk about your first experience with
Yeah,
him.
what was your
Yeah.
first time meeting Gig? How about that?
Oh.
Recount
Yeah, there we
your
go.
First
Yeah,
time running into Gig.
Oh yeah. Okay. What it was actually, I was playing as Olara, which is my high elf cleric. We were walking through the forest, and we saw him having a conversation with, at the time, was Tarkin.
Yep.
Who we thought was Tarkin.
Who we thought was Tarkin, it's Ty. But we ran into him, or we were eavesdropping on that conversation behind like these things of rocks, and then well, it's Gig, so he probably like he knew we were there essentially the entire time. But then he approached us, and we had a brief chat with him, and it was words. He had a nickname for all of us, and it was very specific to our characters, and like just your initial feeling of the character was like they're reading into your soul. Like you feel very violated just by talking to him for like a second. To be honest, you really do. And I feel like that keeps happening with like all the characters. Like anytime a character meets Gig, I think the first reaction is you feel violated. You feel violated and you walk away feeling extremely used. And you're not even sure how or why, or just it's a big giant question mark. Like you don't know if he's toying with you. You don't know if he's like being genuine. Like you cannot read him to save your life. So yeah, that was our first encounter, and then that was with Olara, and then for Sin, it was in the was it? We didn't. No, Gig wasn't there in the Avernus. The first
he was
Avernus
in the
one shot.
No, he was in the second Avernus.
The second, the birthday party one.
Hex RP'd with him before that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it was text RP in Avernus, and then we did the birthday one shot where we had to all fight each other and escape, and that's when me and Alexa escaped Avernus. Mm-hmm. And he's shown up throughout like the Gate series. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Okay. He's my favorite.
So I think a big thing that we can kind of pull on, because going into season 9, something that is a catalyst or just like a talking point is Sin has a deal with Gig.
Right.
So what led to that deal, and kind of what is your interpretation of what that deal is, so that you can kind of understand maybe how Gig works or what deals with him look like?
Well, when I first did the text RP, he was very terrifying. But I also really liked how the NPC plays. I just like that, like his personality is just like really cool, and it's just chaotic and crazy, and it's just like a fun character to interact with. And I had an idea in my head, like I wanted to like have a deal with him in some regard, after the birthday one shot thing. Mm-hmm. Like when we jumped through that gate, I had already pre-decided that this was going to happen in one way or another. What? So, it was going to happen. But it's just like, I don't know, it's just badass. Like, who doesn't want to say like, oh yeah, I signed a deal with the devil? Ha.
A lot of people.
It's like
a lot of people want to say that.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is coming from the girl who walked into the framing place on base here and was like, hey, here's a map of hell. Can you frame this for me?
I really want this map of hell. It looked nice.
The old lady was like, But anyway, so the deal. So Sin signed a deal with Gig, supposedly. I still
Supposedly?
have question marks about that, but
Where is the question mark?
well, if there really is, listen.
No,
So,
this is the time. This is the time to
Basically,
figure this out.
what
Where's the
happened
question
was
mark?
we're going through the gate series. We're in the gate. It's me, Sky, and Crabber. Crabber goes off to go explore. Don't ever split the party, chat. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Just don't do it.
He gets into a fight with some of these like ruby monster things, and they're kicking his ass. So me and Sky go to join him, and they end up kicking our asses. Very much so. It was like questionably a TPK. I was so scared, but I got knocked unconscious. And so in my moment of oh what the fuckery quote maybe I was like, hey, I'll be your blood knight if you get us out of here alive and also take Solus with you and get us out of here. And so we woke up outside of the gate alive and well. And so that's kind of, and nothing was ever said following that.
So I'm going to point out a couple of
errors
things that have happened / facts.
Right.
So, do you remember that time that he gave you a weapon because he was sizing you up to see what you were capable of? So he did that. There was also this time where you literally wrote to him and you tried to get more information on the deal, and he mentioned that you're holding up your end of the bargain.
Yes.
Which would signify that usually to me says, hey, that sounds like you made a deal.
Yeah, but I mean, you could easily just be like, say that. You could like, convince somebody just by
think that he would.
Maybe.
Why?
Just a toy, like, with, I don't know. Just to, like, mentally toy with your head. And it's working because I'm
it's so far. Congratulations.
It's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like, why I have that stuck in my head in such a way, but it's just, like, it'd be really funny to me if Sin's doing all this, thinking that there's a deal, and so, like, she feels like she has to do these things, but there isn't really a deal. So he's just, like, doing them just to do them.
I mean, that is a good point. Do you feel like Sin has ever, do you think she's doing anything just because she has a deal with Gig, or is she really just doing what Sin does?
Ooh,
because I can't think of a decision she's made because she was in a deal with Gig. I've only seen decisions that Sin has made because Sin is Sin.
That's true. Yeah, probably just to do what Sin does. It's complicated. But because I mentioned this before, because he's the only one. He's the only person who's been like, yeah, go fucking break things. Go beat that person up. Like, you do you. Mm-hmm. And, like, not, like, be like, maybe you shouldn't. Like, nobody's, like, he's the only person that's been like that. Okay, and before you say anything, Trey, yes, Gabriel was kind of like that, I guess. But, like, face value, like, what?
He was the first one.
Who?
The Gig. First one to, like, go break stuff.
Yeah, but it's like...
But that was also... And that's another thing that we can go into next. Because, like, I don't know if Gabriel really made a deal at any point or broke it. Like, it's different layouts, but that's something that we can go over once Sin is done. We'll kind of go back because we have had multiple characters that have potentially made deals that are both unsure if they made the deal. And they're just different situations because, Gig is a devil. He makes deals. He kind of waits for you to be desperate enough or for you to want something enough for him to take advantage of that. So that is an interesting aspect of him to always bring in. There's always that feeling that he's just waiting to get what he wants from you until you're ready to give it to him. He won't take it from you. He'll willingly give it to him. But yeah, so, like, in my perspective of the Sin and Gig relationship, and I know this has also been a topic that's been brought up before, is Alexa and myself, I feel like, Sin was just waiting for the time where it made sense for her to make a deal with Gig. Like, as you said, like, she was always going to make a deal. It was just a matter of, well, when can I be like, oh, well, I had no other choice but to do it. She didn't want to just straight out do it. She wanted to have, like, an excuse or a way to backfall on, like, well, I had no other choice. I had to do the deal with Gig. Meanwhile, knowing that she always was going to do it.
I don't think, like, in her head, she was like, I'm gonna make a deal with Gig. Like, it was more like a subconscious. It wasn't be like, she wouldn't be like out loud, be like, yeah, I want to make a deal with you. Like, I'm looking for an opportunity to do so. It was more of like, how subconsciously do I approach the idea of like garnering that devil thing? Because she's tiefling, so she dies. She's going to Avernus. So, like, you see a figure, a devil who is clearly very strong, like very strong.
And like for the stream, for people that are not aware with of Gig, in theory can be killed. We've seen him get injured, but not by us.
Yeah,
and he is a very, very powerful being. Like, the idea of going against him and fighting him is like you're an ant to him. Like, if you bother him or anything, like, he could easily just kill you. So to get I guess a feel for what level of power is he's that level of just like, you really want to mess with him, you can, but like, just know you're not going to accomplish anything, and it might be the last thing that you do.
Yeah.
So, like, that, to give just an idea of the power of Gig.
But, like, to get, as a tiefling, to get on the good side, what if there is a good side? That sounds weird saying.
There's a good side of Gig.
But, like, to garner that relationship, no. I mean, I'm talking OOC here, like, as far as Avernus goes, and the power aspect of it, too. Because not only is he encouraging Sin to be Sin, but he's really strong, and he's also given her a weapon that is equally, like, that just fits for Sin. It's just like a badass great club. So he's like encouraging her to be her. Yeah, so like, would I rather hang around people who are like, that's probably not good, Sin, or hang out with somebody who's like, here's a fucking weapon, have fun, like.
And there is something to be said about that, because as I mentioned before, when talking about the history of Gig and what got him essentially to this point, was his original thing with Freeport was he was in an area where there's tieflings and he was looking after them. So there is a high possibility he has that soft spot for Sin because she is a tiefling. Yeah. And on top of that, he sees the potential for, what she could do and what she could do for him. So it could easily be said that it's a mixture of him wanting her to be who she truly is, but also seeing the personal gain that it is there for him. Because ultimately, I think there are very few things that Gig does that is not eventually for a personal gain. I can think of maybe only one, and that would be because there was another influential force in play. But for the most part, like, he does what he wants for personal gain, but that doesn't mean there's not also an underlying feeling behind it.
Yeah.
Now, I know that we have been going a lot into like the Sin and Gig aspect of it, and like, of course, I have been in this world for like years, so I've had many experiences with Gig. But I kind of want to go over to Ode, Trey, Gabriel, whatever you want to go by, and talk about your experience with Gig, because you've also had a few new run-ins with him.
Indeed, I have. I first met Gig during season 5. During that time, we knew him as Agma Guy, and
oh yep, you did get him for this Agma Guy.
Season 5 was my first foray into D&D, so I was fairly new to a lot of things. And Alexa, when I first made my deal with Agma Guy, I had no idea it was Gig or what that entailed. and the fact that Gig was a woman at the time. Well, by that I mean he was possessing a body. Oh, he used the body, or he's best.
He was, yes, he was a woman at that time. Yes, that's
until
true.
season 6. That's correct.
Yeah, I couldn't remember when he officially made that switch.
Very
That's a whole other thing. There's a lot of lore I could go into with Gig. I'm trying to still keep it high level because it goes.
But let's just focus it on he was a woman at the time, and my character made the deal, and it took the form of an oath. Whereas some of Gig's deals can be as simple as trading of an object, or just giving your word, not really in an oath format, but literally just saying, "I'll do this for you." But I didn't know, and Alexa made it very clear to me that I had fucked up.
Yep.
Because of my deal.
Out of character. No, like, you fucked up.
Oh, like I didn't realize that. So, but when I first met Gig as Agma Guy, it was hilarious because I thought, oh, this is a quirky little cat here. He set me on fire.
How can you get angry at a quirky little cat?
But then things progressed, and after the finale, or the final battle in Season 5, we saw Gig for who they truly were. And we might have gotten some more bits, but some outside factors kind of inhibited that.
You killed yourself?
No, I was talking about Scipia.
Oh, okay. I was talking about you had the.
Was it Scipia or Sibylla? Sibylla had Agma Guy.
Scipia.
Okay.
Because Sibylla was in Season 6.
Indeed.
So, oh yeah, I exploited myself. That was
Why does that keep happening?
Yeah, there's a recurring theme. There is a bit too, because someone in chat actually caught on to it too. The anagram out of Agma Guy that
oh yeah, they caught on to it like real quick. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, fancy.
took us a while. I was really
Yeah, you can actually see that on stream when the anagram came out to play in Little Donovan's brain that episode.
The reaction.
The reaction.
Like, oh, you fucked up. Oh,
my point. That was my head point. Moving on. So, my entire first experience with Gig was, okay, this is a very devious character with underlying madness, but is extremely intelligent, most likely due to a very long lived existence. And that was completely thrown out the window in Season 6. Because that's when I started to realize, okay, all the things I thought about Gig were true, but also they are a mirror. Some might say a cracked mirror, but they're a mirror of whoever they're talking to. That's how I feel. Because when a standout moment for me was when Gig came to our campsite during Season 6. We were all camping around, and he came, and then we were just talking about, hey, how you feel about these feelings? It was like, oh, yeah, Gig, you're a devil. You don't really understand some of the human emotions that are going through your head right now because of circumstances that are going on. And so my character tried to explain it as like, not realizing it was familial love, thinking it was romantic love. So I kind of botched that up and made him think, oh, it's all right to have these. You're crushing on Io. That's cute, man. It was
Nope.
like, oh, I crush Io. No, don't actually crush her. Things literally. Like, no, don't actually crush her. And then there was dancing. He called me Birdman because he meant wingman.
Because you were helping him hit on Io. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yep. That's, yep.
Yep, that happened.
Fast forward.
I'd forgotten about that, but I remember it now.
Bird. Hey, thanks, Birdman.
I gave him a guitar in that season too. A lot of.
Is that where the guitar comes from then? The
Gig guitar? Yep.
That's right.
Guitar. Yep.
That's where the gig guitar comes from.
So, as Alexa said, there's a lot of overwhelming lore that could be delved into to fully go into this. But just sticking specifically to Gig,
There's a lot of lore.
there's a ton of lore.
Yeah.
And
Just change the session to character of Arhor'ha, Gig.
just Gig. Just like I said, this could be like a 5-hour session of just talking about
there's a lot to unpack with him.
Because the prose that you had written, the Paulo Gig prose for Old Freeport, really drives home how sad his story is, though. About Old Freeport and this. Am I getting the places confused?
Nope.
You're right.
You're correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
There's Old Freeport, and that prose that was in Old Freeport as opposed to New Freeport.
Yeah.
Freeport's been raised and relocated more than once.
Yeah. Okay. The first time. That was the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second time was the smiting by
Angels.
angels.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time Freeport was demolished. It's very sad. If you have not read it, please do, because it like everybody thinks that he's like a really bad guy, devil, and he is. Maybe, but like that prose in particular really stood out to me because it shows like how like that snapping point for that character and like the Gig that we know today, why he's so like bonkers. And if you read it, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'd go batshit crazy too if that happened to me.
Right? You're like, oh, yeah.
It's really sad. And so I don't know. I really like that prose. It makes me depressed.
And it is one of the earliest, if you think chronologically, as we're doing players' perceptions of and experiences of. Chronologically, that prose is the first written anything about Gig. The only thing that would have happened prior to would be the event where Gig came out of the splitting of Gigareath and Gig. So that's one of the earliest insights to that character's development. And I do concur. It is a little bit sad.
It is, yeah.
Well, that's something that I touched in on the idea of what created him, because he was not always this way.
Yeah.
And there is also, how did he find it? He might find it. The other concept is that Gig, of what we've seen, is Gig deals with a lot of souls. Like that is his main, sense of currency. That's where how he kind of deals with things. So the idea that we've really been going into really solidifying for this next season is the idea of souls splitting. It was hinted on last season. It's kind of coming into this season as well. Well, definitely coming into this season with Solus and Nova, which is, again, we'll get there. But the idea that souls split and the kind of outlying force and the idea of the familial love is Gig faced off against Willis, who is the brother of Iolanthe, who was one of the champions that was going to fight for the Targ side in the Great Battle. And when they fought, a part of Willis essentially kind of like split off and attached to Gig. So it wasn't just like, oh, he now has Willis. He just had like a little bit of him. So I think that's the only time that it wasn't like a personal gain for Gig, because he had the familial love for Io, which is what Ode was mentioning before.
Yeah.
It was just like a part of him that was there. Like it wasn't like his whole being, but it was like an influence. And Willis is very book smart, emotional. Like he is very, I guess he is like human. Like he's
very altruistic. You can get a good read from him from the book, the novel that was written.
Yeah, so then Gig had this, kind of part that was influencing a lot of his decisions, and it made him make all these choices to help Io and, help the Targ side, even though they were going against his other half, Wrath. Like, he still kind of pulled into it. And, part of it was because he liked things the way they were, and he didn't want the, world to change. He's like, I really don't want you guys to lose, because then the world will change, and then it's like an inconvenience, I feel like, for the most part. It's like, I could deal with it, but like, this is just an inconvenience. I want the world to stay the same. But also he wanted Io to be safe because of that part of Willis that was in him.
Right.
So it's a lot of like there's a lot of influences. Now I know something that we have touched on in the past is that that part of Willis is now gone from him, so he no longer has that influence. So we're kind of seeing there's like different versions of Gig. Every time you see him, he's a little bit different because of his experiences, because of potentially soul parts that get attached or certain influences in his life. For instance, the first time I came across Gig, it was a woman in armor, because after he was with angels and everything, he had to bring himself back to power, very similar to the idea of Voldemort from Harry Potter, where like he had to slowly build his power. And so he essentially was like latching onto or created this armor that he could live in. And then he used a previous character's sister as a vessel, essentially. So more like possessed the girl, so that he was a girl for a while, because it was how he could survive. And he eventually got strong enough that I was angry at him and just like, you are this, woman, like, how could you? And then he's like, well, fine, if you don't like this. And he just like snapped and changed it into a man. And now it's the Gig that we know. But it's all these influences of things and souls around him that really affect who he is and, how you experience him. Yeah. And like, I can't put a big enough point on the fact that like you literally could talk about this character for hours, because there are so many aspects and there's so many driving forces to the character.
Something I've been just curious about from day one with Gig is like his end goal, like what he's trying to achieve long term, just across Arhor'ha in general. Like what his objective is.
Can provide a small amount of insight into that, because there are some things that have been said that, again, it might not be his ultimate end goal, and I don't know if we're ever going to fully know his end goal.
Right, yeah.
But a statement that has been said, and it's kind of a concept of, like, Skyport and everything, is, I think there's something like, Reth can have the ground, I want the skies. Something to that nature. So I think, ultimately... And to me, there's like a number of ways that you can think about what does having the skies. Like you have Skyport, so there's literally a city in the sky that he created. He's just like, this is mine now.
There's a lot of eerie undertone Celestian-related things with Gig that drive, and Paulo that drive me absolutely insane. And I'm pretty sure Buck does this on purpose to make me sleep at night. It's fine. I love D&D.
He's like, everything's fine.
But on that, so... Gig wants the sky, or Reth can have the ground thing, but because Gig was part of Reth, hence Gigareth, and they got split, so like, does Gig see a Reth as his like sworn enemy currently? I'm just asking this like broad, like just for the chat and stuff. Just
I would say just more of a. To me, I always saw him as kind of a nuisance. Like, it's a. I mean, this is going very deep into more lore, so I'm just going to really briefly touch it. The idea of a builder and a breaker. Like, he was a breaker. And he's good, but, like, he also he has people that can break for him. So, it's, I was kind of going the idea of, like, is Reth something that it may be something that he can't control. So why not just focus on things that you can control? And he's just a nuisance. That's kind of how I always looked at it, or thought his impression of him was.
That's true, because he needs breakers so he can build the thing. So it's like a necessity, but you don't really want it to be, but you have to, because you don't really have a choice. And I feel like that would really irritate Gig. Not able to really have his hand on something like that, with like just you can't really control the Reth stuff.
Yeah.
Other than clearly seeking out breakers walking across Arhor'ha currently and making deals with them.
Yeah.
It's one way.
Yeah, it's like it's just a different aspect of it, or a different idea.
Yeah. That's true.
Now, that's been a lot about Gig. It's been about 40 minutes of talking about Gig. So I'm going to pull away from Gig now because, again, hours could be done with Gig. So let's look at other characters that we know that we're going to come across. So we did, a quasi nemesis, if not, like I know my character sees him as an unknown thing, so she thinks he's a nemesis, but it's not always the case. Let's go into like a good character that we have an idea that we know we're going to come across, and this is something that I know Ode can definitely talk a lot about. I can talk about as well, and we're going to talk about Bolania. So we've been given hints that we are going to see Bolania. I know Ode / Nas, whichever character, I think Nas, which is the character that you're playing, has the most lore or connection to Bolania. So do you want to talk about her?
Sure. Bolania is, from when I met her, is half siren, sea elf, and she is the half sister of Nas, Elven Bard, who actually fought alongside Gig and Iolanthe in the Great Game, which saw Reth defeated quotation marks. And she is just a really sad soul. She grew up without her father, as their father was a traveler and very much a diplomat, and she was raised by her mother. And in Triton society, she was not seen the best. She didn't have the best childhood, but she had hope in the form of singing and the songs that her mother taught her. But one day her mother died, and so Bolania had to leave.
As you do.
Because they wouldn't accept her. So she started traveling the coast, swimming around, trying to do her best and live her best life, which is where she met Safina. Good old Safina. And they had a good time. They're buddies. But then things got bad, because then she found a bad company with he who will not be named.
I think you have to name him. I think you have to name him.
I
For the sake of the stream. You might need to name him.
God, and I thought I hated Jacob White. You have your own personal nature towards a character. Oh man.
The character she fell in line with was Thomas von Wolfengeist, a deplorable disgrace of a bag of flesh who walked around in another person's garb, impersonating someone else, so he could get her trust. And if I'm remembering correctly, he dressed up as her father.
Yes,
so,
that's correct.
Yeah. So I hate him because he tortured her and basically forced her to be part of the Dark Hearts, which was the side fighting for Reth. And then she went into a really deep depression where she thought, the only relief I have from this suffering is death. Well, that was until Nas came along. He was like, no, remember, respect yourself. She was like, I will fight for you. I will live for you. Like, yay, sister.
And that's when
Albert.
Yeah. Is that when she died?
Yeah, she died.
Yeah, she died for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right in front of Nas, if I recall correctly.
Yep, in his arms.
Oh yeah, in his arms.
Oh, I just died in your arms tonight.
So
it's something you said.
A deal was brokered between Nas and Targ to keep Bolania safe. If Nas kept Io safe,
it was with Ty. Yeah, it was with Ty.
That was weird.
And that kind of goes back to what happened with Ty earlier in that season. But yeah, it was with Ty.
God damn it.
Yeah.
I have my own feelings toward Bolania that are irrational.
Nas agreed because he was literally on the verge of keeping her soul there because he was playing a certain song that kept her spirit bound, which really messed up and pissed off Kellamvor and the Raven Queen. But he was fine with that, because my sister is not going to die when I just got her back. So Bolania was with Ty in the Demi Shadow plane, And they kind of had like a little relationship where Blonde was like, I can forgive you. Like, no, I've really done some bad things. I deserve this. You stay close, little lamb. I will protect you in this dark night. But then Paulo found a way to get him out. But since Aurora is just full of sadness, only Melania came out, and she was crying and having a fit because she didn't want to leave Tai. But now she's traveling the world, using her pain to inspire others, along with Nas, who apparently is being very big brother protective.
Which, like, I mean, makes sense. He did just see her die in his arms. And then...
I can't unhear the song now.
And then,
right?
And then he got her back. So, like, it makes sense that he's just like, you're going to be in my sights at all time. And you're going to be safe. And I'm going to make sure you're here. Similar to, like, one of my characters, Cass, where she's very protective. And she's like, when people are not by my side, they die. I can easily see Nas having that kind of mindset after what he's been through and what he's seen with Melania.
And the subtle assumptions that, it might be paranoia, it might be substantiated, that he alluded to the Raven Queen and Kellenvor. You know, gods that go over memories and death that might have feel cheated by Melania of Aiden.
And they might try to get back, they might try to fix the thing. So, like, it's understandable, in my opinion, as to why he would react that way. Be like, you're just going to stay in my sight so that if they come back and try to get you, I'm here. Because she would have just died if he was not there.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like different ways to think about it, because you can think like, oh, well, like, I don't want the character to be clingy. But, like, I don't think it's necessarily clingy. Like, there's very valid reasons why he's reacting that way.
Yeah. He's trying to get that line of like, hey, I know you were like really in a bad situation, and like you probably need a little bit of space, but I also want to be here for you. But I'm trying, because Nas has a problem when it comes to boundaries. A very evident problem when he's not aware of things being construed as, oh, this is okay, because he's been gone for about 100 years. But we're not talking about now. We're talking about Melania. So I'm excited to see what Melania's up to. I just imagine her seeing, like, okay, brother's asleep. Let's go out.
Let's do some shit. Just go crazy. Which kind of brings along the idea that we know that Clem is traveling with her, correct?
Clemens, yeah.
Clemens, sorry.
That's Clem for sure.
So,
like Targ is short for Target.
Yeah. So for this, like, I kind of want to go, Buck, this is the one time I'm going to have you talk. Do you want to talk about Clemens?
I do, but before I circle to the next character, did anyone else have anything they wanted to add about Melania, as it is one of the main plot characters supporting
I did.
a plot? Go ahead.
Well,
like, yes.
Because you mentioned the Raven Queen, and because it's going into season 9, it was said that the Raven Queen has her eyes on Alexa, if I remember correctly.
I have a little pact with her. So
but there was that, and there was two others. I can't think.
Summer Queen,
Melanova.
Yes.
Melanova, which character is the Onyx Queen, and
then
there's
Onyx
the Summer.
Queen, yes.
There's the Summer Queen, which is also kind of Nas related, because that's Tatiana from the Summer Court.
Okay. So I was just
concerning.
So that tie in that regard for season 9 as well, with Melania and all that lore there. That's all I wanted to say.
Which it is, we haven't gone too much into player characters, like we're mainly going with like the NPCs that will come across. We will circle back to like player characters, but that is an interesting concept to think of. A potential conflict that's going to pop up is that Alexa does have that pact with the Raven Queen, and she hasn't really had to do. The Raven Queen hasn't asked much of her, other than like what she was doing in Avernus. So, what is going to happen if the Raven Queen asks her to do something with Melania when they come across each other? Like,
right?
What would that actually mean?
I'm very interested to see how that plays out.
Right?
Because again,
Well, there is one thing I want to hit on before we go over to Clemens, and that is the concept of the Raven Queen is about memories and thoughts.
Right.
And there has been an event in recent time that involves memories. because it really bothered Alexa.
Oh, yes. Yes, it did. Because I could not remember who Ty was. And it bothered the living shit out of her because she's all about knowing things, and she did not know someone, and she's like, it pissed her off to no end. She's like, this is not okay.
Tis all more of a plot thing than it is a character thing. So Clemens.
See, he's scheming right now, Chad. Do you see this? Do you see what he just did? He like low-key dropped some like panic attack into this cat and just like moved on as if I'm not yeah, this is fun. Yep.
Clemens was so we hit a bit on a few characters. Like I'm actually keeping a running list on the side so that in case there's interests or color that needs to be shaded in, we can. We did hit on the who shall not be named, von Wolfengeist of great, despicable, deplorable existence. He is the
he's dick.
Yes, so Clemens is a von Wolfengeist. He is the youngest of the group. So his elder brother. Huh?
I thought wasn't he the son of Albert?
He is the son of Albert, but so is Thomas.
So Thomas right. Brother. My brain, for some reason, was saying that he was the brother, even though I know that's not true.
Yes. So familial. So we're talking about families. We have Albert von Wolfengeist, who hasn't gone into great mention, but he was the person leading the Dark Hearts, which was the antagonistic group for season 6. Basically, the supervillains against the superheroes, sort of said. And that would be Albert. So Albert's sons are Thomas and Clemens, and Clemens is a character of interest who shows up in season 9.
Just a sweet bean. Just trying to live.
He's a sweet bean. So whereas is kind of mentioned, Thomas is just this very horrible human being, as Ode mentioned, to the level of torture. He put emotional, almost like Reek to Ramsay Bolton at levels of being sadistic. Yeah, like really twisting Volania. And then Albert was arguably one of the largest threats to Arhor'ha, the continent, and taking up the mantle of basically the dark side, the Sith. So there is great suspicion on Clemens, of which this character who's very student, very Hogwarts. I would say if you put Neville Longbottom and Draco Malfoy's shoes, just this really sweet guy who just wants to graduate and kind of make the world a better place. Another way of looking at it is, if you're familiar with that series, the Tangled series, he's very much like Varian, and he's very smart and a little quirky, and he just wants to make the world a better place with the tools he has at his disposal, and he's not huge on leaning on other people the way his father was, and didn't even feel like his father was that too. I'd rather have alchemy, I'd rather use artifice, I'd rather not lean on gods and kings and demons and devils, because we can make the world a better place with our own two hands. So he's very much this positive being, but as a positive being in a very non-positive world, he is subject to the realities that the shadow of his brother and his father, which have come to light in the aftermath of the good side winning, is that the people that are responsible for the safety, the Candles, have looked at him with great suspicion, like he's just the next coming of the plague. So he had limited protection, and it was shown up in a one-shot that was about graduation, which is where one of Sin's characters, Matilda, played in. A good character that Ode played was Fabian, who had another demonic slant to that really, I think it was devil, because it was Mammon. A devil slant to it, and his whole entire thing is, here's the graduation, here's your final, your thesis thing, do these things. A different DM did that, so shout out to Roy for a fantastic one-shot. And at the end of this, Clemens was definitely took a lot of the heat for the more questionable things that happened, such as his good friend Fabian's more infernal influences, which, again, good being, didn't rat out Fabian, but as a result, they, again, very botanist, if you knew Neville Longbottom, he's big in alchemy, so you grow plants and herbology. They tortured him and burned down his entire garden, trying to get him to talk, and they did not. So since then, he's trying to get his act together, and Like, just move on, not get poisoned with toxic thoughts of vengeance or whatnot. And he really believes that his father, Albert, who was an antagonist, is still a good person. The person that he sees his father as is this family man who does the best to the people around him, to his family, and has never seen any inclination that he was anything different. So he's constantly defending his father, which is politically putting him in an extremely bad light.
Which is also an interesting concept of, like, thinking of Albert, because, like, ultimately, I mean, depending on how you look at how the champions for the evil side, essentially, were treated, how much of that was Albert and how much of that was Thomas, because Albert actually was trying to stop the fighting, ultimately, by joining things together. So, like, it's an interesting idea of, like, what is, good and evil, and, like, how evil was Albert? How much was him and how much was his son taking it too far?
Yeah, and then the concept of a hero to one person could be a madman or a villain to another. Mm-hmm. There are some, and not to segue to Albert too hard, but there are some moments in the series that definitely seed that question. It's like saying, I'll drop this thought bomb on you and walk away. But if you start to really decompress Albert a bit, before the battle even happened, there was a parlay that didn't have to happen. Like, there was interventions that did not occur that could have, when you start thinking about it a bit too deeply. And it does beg the question, the individual thought of, do you think that Albert was a bad person for what he was doing?
Yeah.
But that's not about Albert. We're talking about Clemens. Clemens is in season 9. So he's a very positive being who's not had the best journey thus far, and he's very alchemist and artifice oriented. He's very adverse to the concept of relying on external forces, be it gods, devils, whatnot. It's a very highly magical words. These aren't theoretical or super occult-esque. They're the equivalent of going and getting like a grant or like a scholarship or like a payday loan. He's like, I don't believe in doing loans. I believe in just getting this money by myself, this credit and this ability. I don't really make deals. The interesting twist, since we covered Bolania, is that when he was having the roughest times with things, music is an important part of our creative community, and it's an important part of even the characters in. So when Bolania is doing like her I am sad but I am strong, or I can get through rough times, so can you, sort of her thing back to the world, he would think highly on those songs, and then someone just like told him like, oh, the person that musician you like so much, hey, your brother tortured her, and then he's like So
are they, because I know you mentioned that we'd come across both of them. Now, are they traveling together, or
they'll be traveling together?
Okay.
And it'll be interesting drama and tension as now the Clemens is aware of who Bolania is in that context. Bolania is not currently aware of who Clemens is in context.
In that context.
And Nas is like, stay away from that boy, which she is like, go off, thanks, Dad. No. So it gives that little bit of drama.
Yeah. Which also makes sense, because Nas hated Clemens' brother so much that he'd be like, I can't say that his brother's not doing the same shit. It does make sense. Now,
Sorry.
How dare you?
How dare you?
So that gives him a little bit of Bolania and in Clemens. Now, a bigger, person that we know we're going to come across is Jacob White, who is like we're going to kind of skew back to some villains. Now, I can give. Actually, no. I'm going to take this over to Sin.
Oh,
well, before we kick over to a new person, I know that there's a lot of context that Ode might have regarding the Clemens side of the house, because Fabian, which is the character that he played,
that's true,
was one of the few people that stuck with Clemens, even when Clemens was seen as like a pariah, like no one liked him.
Yeah. So, where do I start with this? Fabian is a halfling who, as previously stated, went to the academy with Clemens on a scholarship.
and he has he's convinced that he's cursed because he has an obsessive need to accumulate wealth, and if he doesn't, he turns into a devil where the ball of his feet kind of elevate, his heels elevate, the ball of his feet become like stuck to the ground, toenails get long, hair gets white, gets a forked tongue, the whole deal, the whole shebang.
Nice. I mean,
And-
gross.
Yeah.
Dude straight up possessed.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But Fabian really like cared about Clemens because besides just, hey, we're both outcasts, why don't we stick together? He honestly thought that Clemens was a stand-up guy. I mean, in all of his botany, he thought, you know, you got some pretty cool stuff here, dude. I mean, besides just, hey, can I get like a few coins? Because that was kind of like the running gag.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
yeah.
can I get, like, a few
their
coins?
original get together is that I need some money, and you know the von Wolfengeist were rather wealthy, affluent family, and he always gave Fabian money.
Yeah. But after that, they were pretty cool friends. And they would do a lot of stuff together. Look at plants grow from time to time. Have Iron walk around in vines to see if they're poisonous or not. They were really ragtag team. But when Fabian's more infernal side started to take notice, which was most evident during the one shot, where he went full, almost full devil on the Earth Elemental, and then Clemens got some heat his way because of Fabian's influence, and Clemens didn't rat him out. Fabian was destroyed by that, and so he's kind of been distant in a ways, because after Clemens got destroyed and tortured, he tried to go and see him, like, hey, bud, I'm sorry this happened to you, but I'm sorry. He didn't know how to apologize. And then he's got his own stuff going on. So
Yeah.
currently
and
the two, yeah.
It's like there's this. And they're good beings. Like they're good friends that realize if they stick together, they're both gonna get thrown into the dungeon. So
Yeah.
it's this really rough. They're the few friends that truly existed, and Arhor'ha has these like reoccurring themes. Dante, Leon, and Clyde Mason both had that problem, and it's interesting to see that story repeat itself with Fabian and Clemens, where they're still friends, but they just can't be around each other.
Yeah. So, yeah, Clemens going off Bologna, trying to build himself back up and do the best he can. Fabian's out here doing research into history and trying to find a cure, but also following in the footsteps of his adopted father, trying to be a businessman, because he's pretty sure with this like curse going on, and he has an imp, he's gonna have to.
So
This isn't the last time he's gonna do some deal with the devils, but
who
hey,
is
I
Fabian's
digress.
adoptive father?
Jeremy Goldstein.
Jeremy Goldstein.
Jeremy
Oh.
Goldstein.
Yeah, little factoids I think that also often get lost with all the data, which these firesides are good for, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Jeremy Goldstein adopted Fabian.
Why?
Well, that's the question,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
Don't know.
Jeremy Goldstein's an asshole.
Yeah.
All right, now so that we don't like segue too much into other like rabbit holes, which we could do very easily with Goldstein and all that. I think that covers
Now
a
we-
full spectrum of Clemens. Now let's
Okay.
roll back to
Now we can go. Okay.
Speaking of assholes.
So Jacob White. So like, I'll give a brief of what like I know of Jacob White, because
He
it's
was-
not as intense as Sin's will be. Mine is just my general knowledge, or at least the world knowledge. Like mine is more like the world view of Jacob White.
Because
So
he was talked about during the last Fireside too, during the
Yeah.
the season five.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna go just like a little bit, just a teensy bit more into him. So for Jacob White, he's shown up in season 5. 5? 4?
Five? No.
Yeah,
hold
yeah,
up,
yeah.
hold
It
up.
was season 5.
Season 4.
4.
And season 5.
Four.
Yeah, his first appearance.
4 and briefly in 5.
Yes, his first appearance
Yeah.
was
So-
in Bronze Bastion in season 4.
So in Bronze Bastion, which season 4, he showed up because he essentially was running an outpost, and he just had. There's like a general feeling of Jacob White that when you talk to him, there is something off. You don't know what it is.
He has a southern accent.
Yeah, and like he's got a southern accent, and
well,
there's
I
just
don't
like
know, with the great hospitality that I'm providing. Would you like some dinner? It's not poisoned, I swear.
There's just like this feeling of like something's not right. I don't know what. Can't put my finger on it. Something's not right. So like that was like the kind of the first introduction to like his personality, and we got the information that he does collect things. He had like a small stash at the outpost that something was stolen, but he would not tell us what it was. So he procures things, but also it's pretty secretive to himself of what he has. But he does like to collect things. Now, we did see him, again the next season, because it was at the same outpost that we saw him. So we had another, brief view of him where he was now, essentially changing narratives to what fits him, because the previous group had become a nuisance because they planted a tree that got cursed, and it's like this whole thing. But ultimately, the worldview of him is that he collects multiple things. He has all these items, and if you need a rare item, he may be the person you go to, but of course everything has a cost. He's not seen as a villain in the world. He's just seen as this collector of many things. And that kind of goes a little bit into, Sin's story, where like he does collect many things, but now we have learned he has also collected people. So Sin, I'm going to have you go into your perception of him. That's not the public perception. Tell us about Jacob White.
Well, Jacob White is he's an asshole. That's short term. Short summary of Jacob White. His involvement with my character, which I'll be playing in season 9, is that he took her from her family as a child and kept her basically as a slave, eventually selling her to some devil in Avernus, which is why the first one shot took place in Avernus, thus escaping, yada yada yada. So he's not a good guy, and he's also pretty strong. I haven't actually spoken to the character as Sin yet.
Like in campaigns.
Or in the campaign, or any campaigns. This is just backstory based. But he had Sin and Solus under his what's the word? Hello.
Mentor.
Stewardship,
is that the word?
Warden.
Sure.
Wards. You're wards of, like, kind of like what's his name from Game of Thrones? Theon.
Jon Snow. Oh no, Theon Greyjoy.
Yeah, Theon Greyjoy was a ward to the
Okay.
Starks. It's like that.
Yeah. And so in order to break Sin, or try to, he would end up killing her best friend Solus over and over and over again, and bringing her back to life because he is involved in like necromancy magic. Yeah.
Or is
I think
access to
he just has access to it.
Access. Yeah. Because he's a really rich. He has lots of funds to be able to do so. It's my understanding. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he would kill her, resurrect her, and I would keep going on. And the only way for him to stop is if Sin would do it and kill Solus, basically to break Sin. So that's my character's view on Jacob currently, is that he's a pretty awful human being. Yeah,
there's a lot of those.
there is. Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting. I feel like that's all I know.
Well, then,
For now.
again,
For now.
that he has come to. He is aware of where Sin is now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like the idea
He showed up in
that
season 8 briefly.
yeah,
He
like
did, yeah.
the idea, and I don't know how much we want to go into this because this does kind of go a little bit into Sin lore, but she essentially had the genes or potential to be a breaker, which is something that also Giga's looking for. Which is a very valuable thing to have if you can just like break things down to essentially their elements to be that can then be created into something. It's a very powerful tool, and it's been hinted strongly that he had Sin because she had essentially like that genetic quality, and he was trying to essentially activate her by making her kill her friend. But to my knowledge, he didn't think it was successful. And that's why he dumped her in Avernus, because essentially she was broken goods. Like, nah, this didn't do what I wanted to do. Drop you in Avernus. And that's where, Alexa and Sin met. But we've come to find that, oh, wait, no, it actually was successful. He just didn't realize it. Right. So, but now that you're out of Avernus, and you went to Nexus, where we were doing the Gate series last season, Jacob White did show up because there's also Ford, who is also someone that is Jacob White's property, or someone that he sees as Jacob White as his property. Right. So he went to essentially gain favor with the elves and say, well, you can use him. So he knows where Sin is now.
Yeah, and I think it remind me, Buck, is when Jacob was speaking to the elves in the Gate series, he did refer to Ford and Sin as, quote, his property.
Correct. Yeah, it was
very word for word.
It was very word for word. It wasn't insinuated. It was outright.
This is my property.
Sin and Ford are my property, and I'm leasing them to you. You're kind of holding them here, but they're not yours to hold. You're holding my property, and I am allowing it, but I'm gonna want something out of this later, sort of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's kind of he's gonna die.
I have a question for Buck.
Of course. What's up?
Being what inspired you to make Jacob?
What inspired the origins of what made me put Jacob White into the world?
I know one of them was you wanted to do a Southern accent.
Yes.
I'll be honest. This was back to season 4, so we're talking over 2 years. I couldn't say whether or not I wanted Jacob White to have a character with a Southern accent, or if I wanted Jacob White and then said, you know what, this will have a Southern accent. But what I did want was I wanted someone who owned an outpost that made you wonder why all these other outposts have failed, but his outpost didn't. The part of the world lore is when you think about like medieval times and whatnot, there's this concept of a lot of arable land, and then small like cities where some things are concentrated in. But in Arhor'ha, we're going to pivot to lore of the world for just a second. In Arhor'ha, there's plentiful food, so you could easily forage. And the idea of getting the food is what's truly dangerous, because the world is very Jurassic Park-esque levels of danger. That doesn't stop people from having their own independence and ideas. Like, that's how Freeport started. Their own ideas and saying, well, I'm going to just try anyway. I'm going to build walls and build like a town like New Haven or an outpost with walls, and we'll live in there and go get food and come back and so on and so forth. So the idea that there are other outposts that are funded or inspired to do is not uncommon. It also, as a twist for those DMing or want inspiration, it also means there's plenty of ruins to go look through out there in the wilderness of ideas of things that did not make it. Now, to bring back to Jacob, it's like, well, his has been working for quite some time. The first concept of having him is like, well, I want someone that has it together, that's not super like, I have control and I have power, but rather he's just really nice, and there's something not right with him. So the fact that was the first response to players, like, oh, cool, I managed to craft this to design.
Oh yeah, that was 100% like I don't like this.
Because when people came in, he was like, cool, I'm very aware that you're here, and it's kind of creepy. And it's like, well, we're gonna invite you to dinner. You don't know who I am, but I know who you are. And there is something about having a southern accent with it that made that really pull together. Nothing against anyone that has a southern accent, but it seemed to really be on the nose. And that's how Jacob did Jacob. Now, the rest of things with Jacob, I can't go too deep into because it would be something that's going to be explored in Season 9. But the big things to focus on, since the benefit of those streaming or taking the time to go watch this, is that he's an individual who has and amasses wealth that procures strange items. And one might say hoards the wealth and then uses it to acquire more wealth. And the idea of someone like Sin or Solus is abstracted to the idea of what is an object or wealth. Part of wealth is power and what you can do with it.
I just like the idea of someone that has all this wealth. Like, you know what I can do with this wealth? Get more wealth.
I mean, it's to a degree a little bit of like, he is a little Lex Luthor-esque. I think it was mentioned previously when someone asked who Jacob White was. Like, well, you have to. The idea is that he doesn't appear to be affiliated with anything, extraordinary in the world. Like, no gods, no kings. He's very self-made in that aspect. But he has, without a doubt, influence. If you think criminal organizations, he's a very nice southern, mafia don, organized crime, if you think about it. Because he has power, he's got money, he's got resources. He went and, scrapped together Ford. So that's something that I think I'll have to pivot on specifically when we went into a different series, which was the Relic Hunters. There was this concept of there are Warforged in the world. They are a rarity for different reasons. Not going into it, but there are Warforged, and
it's a whole other thing.
To properly make a Warforged for a certain purpose, Jacob had to go scour out parts where they were last in mass production, which was Freeport before it was smited by angels, or celestial hosts. Sin alluded to which Freeport was this, because there was one that was shot by elves in a gigantic cannonade. There was one that was, purged effectively by a celestial host. So this is the second version, of which there were Warforged there, obviously, to protect against, another cannoning. So scavenging that together, he crafted together Ford. So in his mind, fully his property. Now, no plot armor. Ford effectively, was constructed and his sentience was returned to the world, the effect of resurrection, and they couldn't contain him. Everything, all the precautions they thought that would work, the power words or the kill switch words, weren't working. He just peace. So he's kind of had he himself, for his different character and in his motives, but as far as Jacob's concerned, I invested into creating you, I invested into returning you here, I have plans for you, you're one of my assets, you just have this pesky free will thing.
Yeah.
Silly free will.
Very. Just pivot a little bit. In Relic Hunters, free will was a very heavy theme.
Very heavy. If there was a DNA to Relic Hunters, a lot of it was almost to the levels of Pirates, levels of chaos and free will. So everyone had a lot of that. And to not pivot too far into those characters, because I don't want to get too far away from Season 9, but you think about characters like Trash Panda, you think about Ford, Cedric, Ildry, a lot of them had to do with their own free will and their choices. And they all end up returning back to us in Arhor'ha in Season 8 at Old Freeport.
Yay.
Alright, so that's Buck's add-on to Jacob from the perspective of Ford. Alexa and Ode, I feel as though you have some insights into this character.
Well, and this kind of hits into a couple of the plot points, the character discussions and plans for Season 9. Because I haven't gone too much, at least on stream right now, about Alexa, who is a candle. So she is very privy to essentially a spy, or what was it, the CIA, she just has all
intelligence wing. For those who have forgotten realms, they're similar to the Harpers. For those more familiar with the United States intelligence agencies, they're CIA, FBI types. They're intelligence agencies.
Yeah. So for Jacob White, she kind of has that understanding that there's, again, there's something off. but she has like a little bit of that information of like something like, oh, there's something more off, and kind of knowing what he does, but at the same time being a little powerless with like what to do. The biggest message she has attempted to put into Sin's head is that just going and killing Jacob White will not solve your problems, because, you know, Sin hates Jacob White for very valid reasons.
Yeah.
You know, looking into it. But it's kind of the idea of, if you take a man down, you're creating a void. And it's something that's been seen through lore of, like, when someone goes down, someone has to fill in that place, and it probably is not going to be for the best. It may, sometimes, on very off chances, everything will be fine. But for the most part, it's not. So, you know, she's kind of aware that, like, he has this power, but if they just take him down, what's to say that someone else is just not going to get that power? So her biggest thing she's been trying to bring over to Sin is, like, just killing someone is not going to fix your problems. And that, of course, is what Sin very much wants to do, is just kill him, because she hates him and she thinks he should die. So a big portion, because I know we're going to have to be dealing with him in this season, is kind of what direction do they end up choosing, because he has all these resources and all these items. We don't know what he has. We don't know who. I think a big idea and something to think. I think, like, the idea of Jacob White and Gig, you can kind of see some comparisons and some differences, because Gig has all this power and you're not quite sure of his motives. Mm-hmm. And the same idea, Jacob White has all of these resources and you don't know what it is. He has, like, that is his thing, is getting resources. So if we kill him, would he actually stay dead? How can you guarantee that he stays dead if he kept bringing back souls? What's to say he just won't bring himself back? And then just keep going. And we don't know what he has as an avenue. Another thought that's been kind of going through my head is we don't know who he has, because he does collect people. We don't know if he has things like it's just an idea. It's just a thought that's hit, but he's very much like I don't know. It's just a very interesting concept of, like, what exactly are we facing? Yeah. And if you take him down, are you actually taking him down, or is it just like for Gig, is it just a minor inconvenience that will then just be fixed? You know, like, that's like kind of like my ideas on him. And there are things that I've kind of gone through. I do wonder, now that he knows that Sin is back, has he realized that it wasn't a failure?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question, and the laughing does not make me feel any better about it. Thank you.
And then if he realizes that it wasn't a failure, we know that Solus has at least been split into 2 parts.
Right.
Do we know if there's been more? And do we know if he has her, because Solus is his property? So there's a lot of, like, layers to it that you have to really think.
Yeah.
That when you go into it, like, what is going to happen? And Solus is someone that we're going to go into a little bit later, because I feel like there's a lot there.
Yeah, I feel like we should cover at some point Solus and the Nova situation. But
yeah, and that'll probably be next. But yeah, like, it's just like, it's a very interesting thing, and I've been in this world a while. I've gotten to know how, you know, certain people think. So for me, like, there's certain, it kind of makes me naturally lead to, like, these kind of open things that you might not think of until all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, wait, hold on. Like, they could have that. And, like, it's not saying that it's true, but, like, that it's a possibility. So that's kind of like my idea with Jacob White, is, like, we don't really know how dubious he is. And we know he likes to collect, but does he actually have an end game other than just getting wealth? We don't really know his end game other than he just wants all the things. And that could just be his character, but I don't believe that's just his character. I feel like there's more there, and I feel like we're probably going to get more. Now, that's kind of my note. Oh, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the Jacob White of it all?
Jacob White, Lex Luthor, kind of character. I likened him more to the Collector in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I use that a lot too. I use that when I describe him to people.
Yeah. But I feel like my experience is kind of very limited because both of my gnomes weren't very keen on learning more about this guy because they only knew as much as Sin told Gabriel, and then Donovan was stuffing his face full of pie.
Good.
But I don't have anything else to say. I mean, we have a very enigmatic character who is very creepily collecting all of these rare, seemingly impossible to replicate objects and then hoarding them. And when Buck was saying hoard, I mean, like, what does this do? Like a dragon or something? What is it, like a dragon? Like,
it is another interesting idea of it because we did know
theory.
We do know that we're going to be seeing more dragons, and dragons do have human forms.
And it would explain how we don't seem to die.
No, fucking no!
Have I cracked the code? Have I cracked the code?
My god! Because I remember the moment Buck's like, yeah, there'll be dragons, and I'll be like, heck yeah, I'm gonna fight a dragon. Can you imagine if Jacob White is the dragon? That's like two badass things happening at the same time. I'm fighting a dragon, and I'm killing Jacob White at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
How awesome is that? Oh my god. Dude. Alright, sorry, I just got really excited.
Well,
I like that theory.
Now that we've sparked that shenanigans, there was a pretty big hint drop about someone on not to call out any lurkers or anything, but it was mentioned they caught the anagram really quickly. We do that every now and then, and it was mentioned that Jacob White has a similar thing going on with him. It's one of those things that's very in your face, and you realize that you'll pull a full on Donovan.
Oh no, I think I understand it now.
I understand.
I don't like that at all. I understand it. I don't like it.
Wait, say it. I'm an idiot.
Oh no, but that takes the fun away. We want to have your live reaction when you get it, and it could be wrong. It also could be right.
But I'm not sure. For those who don't know at home, it's kind of a weird coincidence because apparently so Alexa's really good at trivia. I'm just good at guessing things and pulling them in, and they just happen to click. It's
true. One's an encyclopedia, one's like Cthulhu. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my feels on Jacob and potentially the Jacob White, the dragon.
Maybe.
So
maybe.
I think that we were pivoting towards Solus and Nova next, which was a little bit into Sin's bit, and we had a one-shot recently, which called Jailbreak, which covered part of the output of this. Before we go too deep into it, I like to cover that a majority of all of these stories were not something created by one person, and in every single case, it was either pivoting off of someone else's story or collaboratively with. Like Sin, Solus, and Nova were almost completely started with Brainchild with the way Sin's origin was. Then combined with other elements like Jacob White, like Gig, like Avernus, until we got to where we are today. It's a very interesting melding pot that doesn't create barriers, but kind of melds them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are not all you're going to have this friend. If you have in your backstory, you have an idea of what you want to do, it'll meld into the world, and it could create a lot more than you think it will.
Well, when I was like, yeah, I killed my friend in childhood. I was not expecting one of the main plot points for season 9 would revolve around said dead friend. I was I just thought I was never expecting. Yeah. So it's just crazy how this just happens. It's awesome.
Indeed.
Same thing with Alara. I never thought that she'd have a baby dragon.
Yeah, Atlas. Yeah. Which if we ever pivot out towards Celestian, it's very interesting. When people generally say, "Oh, I want to do something with my character," very rarely they say, "Hey, I want to go ahead and run through this railroad track adventure." It's something like, "I want to explore my character out." And we do that a lot
Right.
here, which is a lot of fun. Now that we've cleansed the palette a little bit, now we're going to go super dark mode, because I think there's even the fun, there's a
Extra dark.
song, and if I'm out of that, I
dark.
apologize, but I believe that the one that you're working on is even an ode to that entire scene, isn't it, Sin?
Which one?
The one where it's got screaming in it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I composed the song of yeah. Oh man, that
Song
was
of Screaming.
Yeah, I made a song that talks about doesn't talk about, the end of it is this really cool scream clip. It's very cinematic-y, just intense song that I made to paint that moment of when I have to kill my best friend. Nobody wants to kill their best friend.
You get to do it
Especially-
twice.
In D&D,
Especially
it
when they're-
happens. It happens, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's,
Baby, I'm looking at you.
there's just like regular friend killing, but then like when you have to kill like your
As you
only
do.
friend in like slavery, like that's your only like happy like little bubble is like that friendship that you have through like what hell would be like on Aurora. Like,
And
it
you
just-
did that. You
and I have to live with that, and you know, especially now thinking that our current Nova hates Sin. It's just like, oh god.
Well, let's. Okay, let's
Let the audience
go.
know who these people are, because
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's start with just Solus. So
Yes.
happy times ish. Go into Solus, because this is a character that essentially, you know, is your backstory, is part of Sin's backstory. So tell us about, you know, just Solus. We're gonna go a little bit more into, you know, what happened to her afterward, but like the
Yeah.
character, you know, what she is, what her ideals are, that kind of idea.
Oh god, you think I had that prepared?
Well, I mean, I
Well-
feel like just you know the character.
Yeah, so she like I always saw her as the kind of like how Alexa is with Sin now. Like that person that you find Solus. That's not how it's pronounced.
Solace.
Solace, thank you. You can
Find
find it.
solace and solace.
Yes, yep, yeah. She's just like that person that Sin had like looked up to. It seemed like everybody really liked her. She was just like that really sweet, kind-hearted, nice, like purely nice human being. That unfortunately got dealt the wrong cards. But yeah, I don't. That's kind of like all I got. The favorite, yes, the favorite, the sweet, kind, caring, yeah, and she appeared during the ritual with Craver in the Gate series thing.
Oh yeah, she actually
big
did,
guy.
huh?
Yeah, the big fight thing. The
And
Solus,
she healed.
Yeah, and she was a cleric essentially, right?
Yep.
Like how you
She rolled on in during the Gate series and Craver's ritual, like the battle for his effectively his soul, and just kind of about midway through rolled on in and provided healing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you know.
And so, like, that's really all, I mean, to our knowledge of what we've seen of her. Like, she's just a nice person. Now, this has been, you know, brought up before. We have an idea of, you know, why Jacob White got Sin. Like, what
Right.
his, I guess, motives behind it. We have, like, at least a general understanding. And it might not be the actual reason, but, like, that's kind of an understanding that we've come across. But he also had Solus. So,
Yeah.
in your opinion, you know, kind of knowing the character, do you think
Yes.
there's a reason? Why do you think he had her? Like, do you think that he thought that she was something different?
The only thing I can think of is maybe that she's a builder as well. But that's just the only thing it's based off of is the fact that she has white hair.
I feel like that's a solid base that we go on a lot of people. Like, you have white hair.
Honestly.
What do you do?
And it fits really well, just the contrast between both Sin and Solus, builder breaker thing. That's would make the most sense to me, but you know, and that as a person who collects things, you definitely want like a full set, whatever you're collecting. So it would make sense to like if you're trying to collect a breaker, you'd also want the opposite of that, which is the builder. Like you don't go and get like salt and pepper shakers, but only get like the pepper thing for the table. You know, like you have to get both of them clearly. You know what I mean?
Now, an interesting concept is: do you think she is one? If you think that that's the idea, because like we kind of went into like you did become a breaker.
Yeah.
Do you think that she ended up actually becoming one? Or is that why... Because, like, there's the idea of, do you think Jacob White had Sin kill her because he realized that she wasn't... that she didn't serve the purpose that he wanted her to serve, so just make her serve another purpose instead?
I don't know, but like you saying that makes me think like having him kill, having him words, Sin killing Solus because of Jacob White basically forcing her hand to do so. I wonder if it was like some plot to release something or start something by the act of doing so. I don't know. Either.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I mean, these again, like, I know I am moderating, and I am saying these as if I know these things. I know none of these things.
Right,
I am just asking questions.
No, it does. It gets my brain ticking. So it's I don't know.
Yeah, like these are purely off of just like ideas and concepts that we might come across that are just like things that get your wheels turning in a different aspect. Now I know, like, I would usually go to like, you know, like, Ode, what's your impression of Solus? We haven't really come across Solus though that much. So really, her existence is mainly in your backstory. We've seen her once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
So like her existence is really purely in your backstory. So now, as mentioned earlier, you know, Sin did kill Solus, and she was successful in becoming a breaker, which shattered Solus. And again, this season, previous season, kind of goes into the idea of like when you break someone, you're breaking up parts of their soul into different parts. And they can kind of go across, and what does that mean when you come across like different parts of the soul and different aspects of that being? So we know of Solus's existence, but then we also know of Nova. So Nova is also another big, you know, villain or, you know, big aspect of...
Antagonist, yeah.
Antagonist, there we go, that's the word. That we're going to be coming across. So do you want to go... I mean, I can go into a little bit of what I know of Nova. Sin, do you want to go into what you know of Nova first?
Sure. So she's like she's the darker side. Like if you take Solus and you break her and her soul is split, you have Solus, which is like the kind-hearted character that I spoke of earlier, and you have Nova, who is the edgelord, evil, crazy,
of what I remember.
Disturbing.
Of what I remember of how she was described, it's kind of like this. What specific part of Solus is it? So, like, you have the one part that we've seen of Solus walking around, the healer, which appears to be like all the good parts, or the, you know, like the way that you knew Solus is there. Whereas Nova, to what we've been kind of educated on, is essentially all of the painful experiences of Solus put into a character. So every time that Jacob White killed her, and seeing Sin finally kill her, all of that pain, all of that experience into one character, which is kind of why she is. It's just a different aspect of them, because it is still their experiences, but it's not balanced.
Right.
These two characters in no way are balanced, so it's the like pure opposites because they're the different experiences.
And a good contextualization, the stuff with Perdita v. Leon is similar with Solus v. Nova.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, again, we're doing a lot of soul splits.
Yeah.
Oh,
A lot of just like different.
Since season 1. I mean,
I know, which we did. Yeah.
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 And she like the Nova sees Sin as the favorite, whereas Sin sees saw Solus as the favorite. So there's like this like back and forth of like
favoritism triangle.
yeah thing. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I know.
But she's freaking nuts. Like she's absolutely like if you guys think Sin's weird and creepy and like Edgelordy, she's like tame compared to like Sin. She like likes to beat things up and stuff, but and lick bloody plants in Avernus. But Solus like Nova goes out of her way to like inflict pain like sadistically. Like
who was the crazy one from Harry Potter that really liked causing pain? Bellatrix Lestrange?
Bellatrix Lestrange,
yeah. So it's a lot like comparing someone who's like very like more tomboy-esque, which is more like Sin, to Bellatrix Lestrange, who just is obviously not right in the head.
There's
and wants
something
to
not
pain.
right.
yeah.
No, there is. We can kind of go because like we've gone around Nova now. I don't know, Ode, how much you want to talk about Nova. If you want to go into because she did kill one of your characters.
Yeah, that's been her one crowning existence so far. Is murdering Gabriel.
Do you want to go into like your impression of her off of that? Because you did. We've all seen the same part, but it was your character. Like, do you want to go into Nova?
Yeah, sure. So I see Nova as a incarnate of pain, trapped with a childlike mentality, who is addicted to her very existence because all she feels is pain. And as it was stated, she killed Gabriel, my character, who a lot to go into him, but save that for later, I suppose. But no, my version of Nova is just an addict, something that's entirely addicted to inflicting pain on and in such a way that it lasts forever. I wouldn't say she does it to have people share in the misery, but I suppose I could make the comparison of Solus being sort of cleric-like in her ways of healing, and Nova being more of a zealot, but they're practicing two different religions. Where Nova is just more into pain, inflicting, feeling this pain. Isn't it wonderful? This glorious feeling of having your body removed or stripped apart, having hooked up by the ceiling. Aren't you enjoying this feeling? Look at all these things you would never know because of me. And with Gabriel, she saw him as her toy because Gabriel's gone through a lot of trauma and he was just getting over it before she reminded him in 12 different ways and several more.
Oh, yeah. I really like that theory. So it's a lot of, from your perspective, if Solus's big thing why she was the favorite is because she was so sweet, made people like feel good and happy, and that was her way of seeing that, oh, she's being a good girl and everything's great. That Nova kind of feels the same way too, but her way of saying, hey, am I doing the right thing? Am I adding warmth to the world? Is that, are you in pain? Because I see pain as the best thing you can be in.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that theory.
Yeah. So
concerning.
Yeah, it is.
I also have the concerns.
Yeah, I feel like not to pivot too far, but it's kind of oddly coincidental. Besides the fact that I have this tendency for my gnomish characters to like die in very painful ways.
They really do.
It's like a curse. Maybe my half
the gnomish curse. That will be the new feat when you get the next gnomish. Like, Curse of the Gnomes.
You have all this power in a little
You
bit of
will
living
die.
space.
You
will
come
die.
with a wish, but it will end with your death.
Itty bitty living span.
Every time. But also, it's kind of a good thing, because with each gnomish death, some really big things happen afterwards.
Oh yeah, Donovan got us like the great, wonderful journey of Sunder.
None of
really gone into what Gabriel's death truly means to Aurora, but it is pretty well defining, because he had a lot of elder elemental inclinations, and we kind of don't want to go too deep into it. Maybe that little gauntlet he made out of the shells of Atlas's little home.
Yeah.
The Infinity Gauntlet.
God.
I'm just, for everyone at home, I'm so concerned because in
That's
one
like
of
the natural state of being.
Yeah. In one of Gabriel's highest moments that would be his downfall, he created an elemental gauntlet in order to harness the power of the elder elementals, because that was his one of his goals, besides wanting to create a better world through his powers as a builder, which, spoiler, he's a builder. And so he took these pieces of an egg made from the energy of the positive and negative planes and created the gauntlet. But when he came back to Nexus and the Gate series, because he was gone for about 6 months because timey-wimey.
Oobly wobbly,
Yeah.
timey-wimey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Never do time travel, kids. It never ends well. It even says so in Wish.
Yeah. So Gabe had the gauntlet taken away from him, and it's currently in the possession of the Zonthriel elves and Xander.
Oh, I could hear the venom in that, Xander.
Yeah, seriously.
I have it's different for Xander, because with Xander, I know he's just being petty because Nas whooped his butt in a violin contest.
And how does that relate to Gabriel?
No.
Yeah, how's that relate to Gabe?
It doesn't. I'm just saying. Okay, go back.
Yeah, I think that's also very interesting. I personally love what has happened with Xander, to be transparent. We've talked about so many Jacob White and Gig, whereas Xander walked in with I am responsible for all the elves and I'm high and mighty, and he just gets laid low by a guitar solo. It's always interesting to see how the characters develop.
Yep. So Xander has the Infinity Gauntlet, which, since I didn't say exactly what the limitations were, because I was just being a builder and most of that information is in Buck's hands, I'm under the impression that gauntlet can do something with the elementals, and I just imagine it combining things, where if you get you get the earth gem, the fire gem, you can make volcanoes, if you have the power to do so. And it worries me, because he can terraform the land, and I'm worried. Go ahead.
Well, I think the idea of the Infinity Gauntlet is a really big part to kind of consider, in this world of getting a magical item. I think commonly the idea is that your character, you want to have something really cool, and that's all you really think about. I want to be able to do all this really cool stuff, but in this world, especially, you don't just get something without there being some form of consequences. You don't just get a magical item and then you're just well, there you go out into the world. You have to think about the implications of having that item. Anything powerful, you wanted it, well, guess what? Everyone else in the world also wants that. And if they see you with it, they might do what it'll take to get that from you. So it really kind of puts it into everyone wants to do the rule of cool. I want this really cool item. It's going to be awesome. It's but realistically, what would happen if you actually had that?
Mm-hmm. It
you now have
our DNA that everything has a price. Magic has a price.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't. I definitely don't want players to be super paranoid if they get something cool. They have to constantly look over their shoulder, but acknowledge that that'll play in. Just the cool factor of, we're talking about Solus and Nova, and we're currently on the topic of Nova. But those things, they're not just cool. There's no consequence to me saying that. And there's no consequence to me having this. it does show up.
Yeah.
And like anything, we're very heavily improv, so you don't have control over everything, and things find their natural course. But we always make a very, very cool story about it. Although it pained me to like do what happened to Gabriel, what that event has, it's like fireworks, and you'll be seeing a lot of that in season 9 because the person that did kill Gabriel was Nova.
Yeah.
And to that idea as well, because there is like an aspect of Nova that we haven't really gone into. We've gone into like, oh yes, pain. She likes to inflict pain. She also has been traveling with Gig. So to at least what we know, she may be a Blood Knight. We don't know. We do know that she has been with Gig, and Gig sent her to get Gabe. Not kill him, but to get him. So it again brings in the idea of like I think if I remember of how you kind of phrased it, Buck, was that she was gonna go, get Gabe and bring him back, but then she found his pain almost like too addicting. Like it was
like a drug.
So much that she couldn't resist it, and that's why she ended up killing him, because like his pain was like essentially like fueling her. Like it was what.
Yeah.
That sweet grandma trauma.
Yep.
Yeah, it's it's kind of like, it's very interesting. If her sense is primarily around pain, kind of as Ode like mentioned, it's interesting. It's like, oh, if you're in pain, that's great. That's how I communicate with the world. So we're having a great conversation. Your screams are amazing to me. Then it's the idea of like sound and versus music. So if you're used to hearing sound, it kind of makes music. It's like her discovering music, but it happens to be Gabriel's pain and very easily addicted to it. So there are some elements there that we're not completely in control of other people's agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna go around the idea of like we haven't seen Gig pissed off before.
Mm-hmm.
But he did have a connection with Gabriel because Gabriel was as a builder, which is what Gig is. Like it was kind of like a, hey, we have this connection. He could, have Gabriel build things and like show him how to do all this stuff. But now he's dead because Nova couldn't control herself. So we haven't seen him, how he really reacts when he is very angry. But I have a very strong impression we're going to see that. But then but like, what will that mean for Nova, and like, what will actually happen? Like, how does he express it? Like, it's a very interesting side of him we haven't seen too much of, because for him, most of the time he's just like living his life. Like, oh, this doesn't really bother me. Like, we've never seen him very pissed off.
Yeah, not to full circle it to Gig, but it's an interesting season 9. A circle of Gig. There's only been a few times where more humanistic emotions have appeared. He is enigmatic, and that was part of the goal for getting Gig together. But the idea of love appeared with the confusion of familial love when we're talking about Io, and that was covered pretty well. I'm not counting that. The idea of loss with Ty, which we haven't hit Ty, but happened there. So the idea of what perhaps pain or anguish, because the very first time there was pain or anguish was in that prose. And that was really a turning point for Gig's character early on. And that's the, what did really Gabriel truly mean to him? Because if it is enigmatic, was he just, as you guys alluded to, like a tool? Was there some kind of connection? What was Gabriel to Gig? And now there's no question, a matter of like, well, you're going to find out.
Yeah, like to what level was it? Because we didn't really know. We always can go off assumptions. But it's something very interesting. And then the other, we are going to go into too big detail because I know it is a thing that plagues Sin's existence, is the idea that Sin is now going to have to face Nova. Yeah. And what does that mean? Because Sin is, she has her own quirks of crazy in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Hey.
Hey.
Happy afternoon.
Hey, Pac.
I was curious, why does Sin need to face Nova? Maybe I missed this from earlier.
She is the split the bad side
Oh,
of
that's right. Got it. That's right.
yeah.
Of Solus, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's inevitable. Like you see that the evil side of your best friend that you killed is out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that like it has to happen, but we have a very strong feeling it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it just kind of goes into the idea of, you know, what does that mean for what she is, like what she's going to do, and, you know, what does coming across Nova actually mean for her. So it's an interesting concept of.
I think the big picture of it is, am I going to hate her or really like her?
That's
From Sin's perspective?
As a buck, I am
As a
also
buck.
extremely curious because,
And
to be transparent, I have no idea how you're going to react to her in that level. You may really like her, you may really not like her, and that's two very different stories.
hearing what we had just talked about about the Gabriel thing and the gig thing, if that comes to light during that same meeting by chance or whatever, it hasn't it's kicked the gears in for that question of like how I'm gonna handle it a little bit. I really hope it doesn't get my character killed.
Well, that also brings up an excellent point to our like DNA. You can write yourself out, you can get yourself killed, and I'd say about 90% or more of all character deaths are player inspired, not DM handled. There's the occasional TPK, but that's super rare. I can't remember the last time it happened.
Yeah. I don't. It's gonna rely on a lot of like what we learned from that encounter.
Mm-hmm.
With both Nova in general, in character as Sin, both the Gabriel and Gig thing that occurred because of her killing Gabriel, and yeah, I don't know. It's my gears are turning now though after this Fireside. So
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Question about Nova. Does she only get that like sustenance off of physical pain? Because in all of the the only time I've ever seen her, it was like physical pain, right? These guys had like these crystals coming out of them. They were like, or is it also like an emotional pain? Like, for instance, if Sin sees Nova and it brings about an emotional pain, does that fuel Nova?
Yeah. So I feel as though it's extremely important to highlight that it's not just physical pain. It is absolutely also emotional pain. And,
well, that's going to be great.
Well, there's two interesting factoids, and I'm not going to dance, but I'll straight up tell that one, because part of Gabriel's specific type of what we'll call like addictive pain was how his backstory was. The things he was dealing with his grandmother and the cult of Giggurath and his journey and how whimsical he was. He was just this fertile field that is ripe for pain, physical and emotional. It was a very high concentration. And another thing to consider, I'm glad Pac brought this up, was that if Gig's capable of feeling pain, emotional or physical,
how is that going to be?
And Nova's going to be around that. I wonder how she's going to take that.
I was actually just wondering that because you brought up the fact that like we're going to see how Gig reacts to this. Like, she caused him potentially pain. What level, like, how does Gig feel pain? And how would that affect her?
Off that. Imagine
all those souls.
Off of devil demigod's pain?
Oof.
Oh my god! I can't wait for season 9! Oh my god!
Clip that at 1:59.
I'm so excited! Oh, I love D&D.
It's the only medium that's only bounded by creativity and construction. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Gabriel is weed, Gig is cocaine.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, if we start going down, narcotics, it's absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's terrifying.
So I actually do have another question about Nova, because we've hinted at like she feeds off of pain. So I kind of like on a range of like on the high end gig, on the low end, let's say.
Trying to find a low end antagonist.
I am trying to find a low end antagonist.
Do we have
rough.
any?
I don't think so. But like,
there absolutely are. It's just that they're completely overshadowed by.
Let's say Leaf.
Oh, okay, Leaf. I was gonna say like 7. 7 was a low end.
Maybe
antagonist.
7. Yeah, like
okay.
how powerful is she? And is she like, if she's in an area without pain, how powerful is she? Versus like if she has
the problem
pain.
is, and you'll see it with the upcoming one shot. That goes and provides more context to Ozymandias and Perdita, that where you are would matter a lot to answer that question.
Okay.
The same thing is true with Gig. Gig's power and being so powerful he is has to do very specific to Arhor'ha, and there was like hint drops that when you go to Avernus, it's not quite the same case.
Mm-hmm.
So for Nova, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like 7, which we haven't covered, so we'll just say think mercenary level, Game of Thrones-esque dude.
We like mentioned him briefly.
Yeah, real briefly. Mm-hmm. And then 10 being demigod-esque and current layer status, which we'll just call that Gig. She's like pretty high. She's like 7, like in most cases. She given
like number 7, not actual 7.
Not actual 7. She's number 7. She's like around like a 7 to 8 range. If she where she was encountered in the one shot of Jailbreak, she had plenty of pain to work with to build upon. So if you starve out those resources, you can drop that drastically, mind you. But she's definitely the sort of antagonist that you don't defeat by charging at her, which is an interesting conundrum.
Sin, that's a very
right. It's really not to say completely exploiting one of Sin's weaknesses, but Sin's MO truly is to charge in head first as the barbarian that she is, as a breaker. Yeah. So it builds an interesting story where then she has to lean on someone smarter like Alexa and 2 people that are joining them for season 9. So she's very strong. To be very clear, give her the right circumstances, and she's extremely powerful. And there are a few story branches that are almost von Wolfengeist-esque with her.
Okay. Which I do find that very interesting because, hiding emotions and like not letting the pain show or like fuel you is something that Alexa is very good at. Like she can very easily put her emotions aside and keep moving forward. But it does make me curious about Sin. Would she be able to do that? Or would it be a situation where like is that just going to be a level of teaching Sin something, or otherwise they are just doomed to fail?
I have a question, though, on the topic of Alexa putting her emotions aside. Mm-hmm. She can put her emotions to the side, but that doesn't mean they're gone. Yeah. So would Nova still feed on that pain? Even if Alexa could still act 100% while still carrying this deep pain about her.
So there is...
Would that even affect?
Right, so I think we're getting like very deep, which I like this, by the way. One thing I love about D&D is it kind of tricks you into thinking about the human condition in places. And one is, how do you handle an emotion? Do you manage it? Do you suppress it? Do you like let it grow? Do you let it die? And in this case, how you handle pain and pain management is kind of like the crux of the question. Mm-hmm. Suppressing the pain is just ignoring the pain, okay? Which means it's still there, and she would feed upon it. Managing the pain, again, means that it's there, but you're finding a way so that it's completely removed. And there's the idea like cauterizing the pain, which is like you can't feel pain.
So, are you telling me that season 9 is all going to be about characters managing their emotional health?
I'd say the plot line that involves dealing with Nova at some point in time will. And the thing that's going to add salt to that is Jacob is going to make that very hard.
Oh, yeah. It's D&D and therapy.
Oh, my God. I'm so excited.
So it's the idea that they're not completely linear problems, but when you start twisting that rope together, it is just, 70s tie-dye.
70s tie-dye?
It's got all the things together in like a cool pattern.
Yeah,
Different colors.
if you're making rope together and twisting like hemp together into rope, but they're all different colors, so it looks like a rope made out of like 70s tie-dyed fiber.
Oh man.
We're still on Nova.
I'm just thinking, I'm going through all the characters who have pain, and one that comes to mind is Perdita and Betrayer.
That's another reason
Let's just
why
hope
I kind
that
of did like a little
never
pivot
meet.
to that case of But amazingly, you're doing a one-shot that's giving you color context to Season 9 that involves Perdita. It wasn't because I really wanted to play Perdita.
It was because you can get that context. I just hope... I really want Alexa and Perdita to meet because of the implications you have.
The Kira and Elle analogy?
Yeah. But I also really don't want Nova and Perdita to meet because that sounds dangerous.
That's a lot of souls.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of souls. That's a lot of pain.
Yeah.
You'll need less of them. Approximately soul less.
No.
Wah, wah, wah. We're 2 hours in. Do we need a bio break?
I was actually going to say that, like we're about 5 o'clock, so yeah, maybe a brief bio break.
All right, for those that are currently on stream, we have a few watchers. Thanks for hanging out. We are going to return, let's say, I count 5:06 Eastern, say 5:10?
Yeah, 5:10 works.
Okay, I will switch things over and see you guys about 4 minutes.
Yay!
And we're back.
Dun, 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 dun.
Fire.
Fire!
So we,
Fire.
we took our little bio break, and then we went over. So we just finished with Nova.
The crazy lady that she is.
Can I just say, Alexa, you've been doing a fantastic job with this
I
today.
agree with that wholeheartedly.
Like, really super professional. Yeah.
Oh, it's happening. It's still happening.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
So,
Today has caused me to go into a certain mode, and I'm just stuck in it. So we are continuing on that track. But I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. So there is something that I do want to go into. We've been kind of skirting. We talked about gig. Now, one of the things, and I know, Buck, I'm going to lean on you a little bit for this. I know a good chunk, but there's going to be a lot that you're going to probably need to fill in.
Okay.
One of the people that helped shape Gig to the way he is, and also helped bring Gig into the world, is Paolo.
Indeed.
So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, Gig was brought in by a group of people that they didn't want to fight, and the character Paolo was one of those characters that brought him in, and is Gig's friend, one of the few friends that Gig actually has. So, to understand Gig is also to understand Paolo a little bit and how that relationship happens, and he did show up last season in season 8. So we did see him a little bit, and everyone has their own impression of him.
Yeah.
But I do kind of want to go just like a little bit into Paolo. So I don't know, Buck, like if you want to start off with him, or do you want me to go into?
No, I think
Paolo.
I'll run through Paolo, start to finish. There's a lot of nuance.
There's a
behind
lot.
It. And I'll give your excellent moderation abilities a little break here, as I will ramble across the story that is this Paolo City. So
Let the ramble begin.
The rambling shall begin. It was mentioned that when things started, Gig was already split from Gigareth, but if you track back approximately 100 years, the actions of the very first season was something that was repeated quietly, like a secret war between those of like Targ/Targrin and his chosen, and Gigareth and his chosen, not the Great Game. So from the inception of this very quiet war for, we'll say, ownership of Arhor'ha, or influence over Arhor'ha, champions were decided, battles were fought, much like a large-scale duel. At the output of that, they were like, great, well, next 100 years are yours, see you in 100 years. At a certain point, these conflicts were escalating. They weren't as minor. More people were getting pulled in as like the desperation and the desire to survive and maintain the status quo, as the good guys effectively had continuously won, were getting worse and worse and more and more dire. It was not a sustainable method of resolving conflicts, or so the previous group thought. In their hubris, they came together, and the choices made by that group, it's like, well, I'm gonna make it very hard for you to kill your friend. As you notice, there's some recurring themes here. That the bad guy's chosen was a friend of the good guy's team to pull on heartstrings. Good people generally don't want to kill their friends. So instead of saying, well, you know what, if they're gonna play dirty, why do we have to fight? Like, why don't we twist this? And that's Paolo, very altruistic, very forward-thinking. He's like, well, if they're going to play dirty and think that by making me pit my friends against each other, that's going to give the evil side an advantage because they have less moral qualms or hesitations about that, therefore balancing the conflict in their scale, then I'm going to balance it in good scale and say, hey, we don't have to fight. It's like, you actually gave us a situation where we could diplomatically solve this problem, because we do not want that outcome. So Paolo of roughly 100 years ago went and researched the other rituals. So we hinted at Alara briefly, and her story involved being split, and the idea of soul splitting, which is a very common recurring theme in Arhor'ha, as well as a dragon of Atlas and Elo, and found out through his big brain and big heart of not wanting people to get hurt, right, is that we're going to do a similar ritual, but we're going to perform it on Gigareth, and we're going to split Gig and Gigareth, which should hopefully diffuse the situation enough that we don't ever have to do this battle again. Like, Gig will technically, the battle is over because Gigareth is kind of out, right? There's no question. He's not sealed, which we didn't cover Gigareth later. Gigareth was sealed, so he loses. He's sealed, but he's out. He's not sealed anymore. So it's a lot of loopholes. Very member of an affluent family, which is now like the Fortunas, a lot of influence with the royal family, but 100 years ago, that's very different than the world we live in now. So Paolo goes with the good side and the bad side, and they all come together and band their resources to create the ritual that extracts Gig from Gigareth, effectively creating the sentient creature that we all know and love as Gig, or just know of Gig. And as seen in the prose was mentioned a bit earlier, which was the melody, I think it was the melody of Lonely Lights that I put in there. Thanks, Ode. It went through that was a huge threat to many people, specifically the elves. Like, well, we're haughty and we know what we're doing. So Paolo was friend, brother, mentor, like the closest person to a very strange little child band creature thing that was Gig. Very patient and really understood him. It's a lot like this is like not quite my kid, but this is like my responsibility. Like Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster.
Like, I have created him, I'm responsible for him.
Yeah, so there's a very Dr. Frankenstein and his monster thing to this. But also, they balance each other out and they're good friends. But if you watch like Lost in Space, like Will Robinson, the robot's like, he's like, but I'm ultimately like, I did this, I'm responsible for this too. So there's this huge mix of emotions, and as like Sin has mentioned in the past, man's like, man, Paolo really has this like control issue. And he does. He feels that he's a wizard, or he was a wizard. So the idea of controlling how things work in a very science mechanical sort of way, or science arcane sort of way, is his thing. He's abjuration based, which is warding and protection, and artifice, which is creation of objects. So Paolo, from over 100 years ago, he's got a long journey to cover. Paolo, from that far back, goes with and is inseparable from Gig. Like, you couldn't see them apart ever. He was present when he was shot with the cannonade. He's actually responsible for Gig not dying at the cannonade. So he feels very responsible for foiling the elves' plans, because he provided just enough to, instead of protecting other people, protected someone he was very emotionally connected to, and it kind of backfired in that he didn't get destroyed, but he was changed. The Gig was changed for it. And as such, he kind of wonders if he did the right thing there. And it got worse since then as he struggled with that throughout the reconstruction of Freeport, as it was built again with more and more dire activities happening. So for more world lore, Freeport was largely destroyed by the cannonade from the forges. But in a very short matter of time, they rallied and rebuilt, like, aggressive industry. And all things have a cost, so a lot of that came with things like piracy, plundering, souls. Like, he's a great builder, so he's like, yeah, well, sanctions are off, we're not following these laws anymore, I can do it, so I'm going to, and we're never going to be harmed again. And he did. And it's like, you know what? We'll just make a city that defies gravity. We'll take the skies. We'll be beyond touch. And that came to a crux with Paolo and Gig, as Paolo was present when the other entities of Arhor'ha, a celestial host, said enough is enough. Crimes against celestial kind and humanity as a whole, and meta-humanity. We're gonna have to erase you from Arhor'ha, including Gig. So that decree from a celestial is like, this is the word of law. It's beyond reproach. Like, this is happening. You can't negotiate with that. You can't argue with it. They're not asking your opinion on it. This is what's happening. So Palo's there, and he understands the ramifications of his actions. He goes and to where Gig is currently at, and he finishes a part of the ritual to actually do the last battle of the Great Game, which was seen in Season 6. The difference with the battle of Season 6 was his traditional Dark Hearts, or one side, dark side, and the light Hearts, or Io side, was that all of them were fighting Gig, including Palo. And Palo lost a lot of his friends that day on both sides. The only survivors that were mentioned were Lil, who is a light side halfling champion, and Palo, and largely because of the relationship Gig and Palo had. So much like there's a lot of parallels, like the end of Season 6 ended with 2 people surviving at the very end. The last battle was similar, only 2 people survived at the very end. Yeah. But Palo did it, and he had to like deal the final blow to Gig to effectively banish him from the world he's in, which set in motion a bunch of other things with Gig, hence the possession with Iris, and like the gender stealing, which was kind of joked about. And Palo was just left with Pompeii is a good song for this, like just looking for like the angels aren't stopping, the celestial hosts, like they don't care. But it's like, well, great. I didn't really do anything. Like with all this time, it was like it was a naive effort of hubris. So being Palo, being very big-hearted, big-brained, he did something very rash, and opened up to undo the damage. So there would be no reason for the law to be encased of because you hurt Pisces, because you did this damage to Pisces, we are doing this action. It's like, well, if we change the course of what that is, you'd have no reason to do so. So he reached out, and he touched the positive plane, and put that to Pisces to heal her, to reverse the damage that was done by Gig. Which, the positive plane is not a place you want to go to, much more than the negative plane. It's equivalent to saying, I decided to spend a quick jaunt in the sun for a second. Mm-hmm. Not good. Like, you literally live to death. Look at the enemy Akira, the idea of living to death. So Palo does like a conduit thing, heals Pisces, and the body is not designed to handle that sort of energy, so he dies, or just air quote, he dies. Soul is kind of like seared off of existence. Pisces is back. Pisces and Aries, who is part of the idea of why things are getting smited. They stop the assault. Things are kind of left in this half state, which is the ruins of White Waters, which was seen in Season 8, where things have that people are just damned there. They can't quite move on to their death. They can't quite live. It's just a very haunted place in Arhor'ha. And his friend that survived, Lil, used her powers to like watch over for the next 100 years for Palo. So that takes us to about the current state, or at least Season 1-esque, Season 5-esque Palo?
Yeah. I think Season 5 is where he pops up.
Yep, that covers the prose, that covers his backstory a little bit. And Season 5, he pops up in Season 3. Or Season 2. Because you go into the Infinity Engine.
Season 2. Yeah.
Season 2. He's then moved forward about 100 years. Palo is discovered at the end of part of an adventure where he was left. And it's funny because before Breath of the Wild, that 100-year thing, spoiler alert. So he wakes up by the events of Season 2. It's his time to wake up. And the group travels a little bit. There's not a whole lot going on with Palo's story there other than this is Palo, introduction to the character. He's trying to figure out what happened and what happened to him. Then you move forward a bit, and he becomes a much more pronounced character as he gets his bearings on the world. What's going on with Gig? He helps out Iolanthe and that group to deal with a pact that they made, or a pact that Iolanthe made. So he becomes this very, very helpful, generally helpful individual who's very wary of what helping people truly means. He has an influence. He's got I can't say the best floof, because the best floof is Torch, evidently. But one of the best floofs in Arhor'ha, which is Panger, is a white, blue, like, cat, super cat, I guess is the best way to put it, who's constantly around, helping out people, just being adorable. Panger, his friend, he doesn't own him. Panger's his own cat.
It's his own floof.
It's his own floof. The ramble continues. Paolo showed up in a few different things. As it relates to Season 9, from there, it's his relationship with Solus. So in Season 8, he appeared due to, I think it was problems. There were specific problems that we're having in Season 8 why he showed up.
Oh, I was going to joke and be like, it's his relationship to Solus, and also for Sin's own mental canon, his relationship to Alexa.
Bump, bump, bump. Yeah, I mean, it gets twisted. So understanding that this is... understanding that this is a character... Yeah, because, ship it. This character has gone through a lot of damage and time travel. He's not, kind of like Gig, not quite a normal character, another normal creature. The events have changed him and continue to change him. Fast forward a bit as it relates to Season 9 and Season 8. Season 8, he appears because of what's going on. The Gate series as a whole involves going across, jumping through the gate and what that does to you and takes from you, involving Crabber. He's got, thoughts about Crabber, because he comes back, I think, with Ty's, part of Ty's soul.
Yeah, a part of Ty's soul.
And he's very invested in that. I guess we have to jump back a little bit to, what was it, Wayfinders? Because he showed up in Wayfinders, and it ties into that. Wayfinders, he showed up, had some relations with Ty, understood the value of Ty's soul and involvement, and then here in Season 8, he's showing up, or Crabber's showing up with a piece of Ty's soul and goes like evil mode on it, in which case he, for lack of a better term, curses Crabber, who's like, I'm gonna go eat this soul down my gullet and be whole again and get wings. And Paolo's like, no. No, you're not going to do that. You're clearly very, very malicious. So if you say you're such a good person, then Kun Sun's light, well, that'll be fine. But if you're lying to yourself and everyone else, you're gonna perish. So if you're being honest, you've got nothing to worry about. If you're lying, you're gonna die. So it was the idea of the good parts of the soul we're going to eat against the other. Objectively, I think that Sin didn't take that who are you to judge antics down, because she also had a very similar conversation with Sin.
With Alexa?
And Alexa. But no, with Sin, remember he put the shackles on Sin.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said that like Sin had that very same conversation with Sin. I'm like, this is not computing.
No.
But yes, if she had the same with
had that conversation
Paolo, that makes
with
sense.
Sin.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
there was a few different conversations, again, rambling. Paolo with Sin, Paolo with Crabber, and Paolo with Alexa. The Paolo with Crabber was, you done bad, this is what's going to happen now. With Sin, it happened first, which just made Crabber's situation significantly worse, was that Sin is a threat, and he kind of covered it. It's like there are options to address this threat, and unlike seeing things through or waiting and see like he did previously in Freeport, he shackled Sin, like gave her like manacles that would keep her from being such a threat. Which,
right.
Sin, who was a previous slave, did not take well to that. Did not take well to him trying to control the situation of her life. Went crazy on him. And then, I believe it was Crabber, who was capable of breaking them, did. Meaning that option was off the table. And then, between that action and Crabber's inclination with the soul was how Crabber got cursed and created a huge, like, 3-parter thing of Season 8. Paolo's relationship with Alexa, again, Sin and Alexa in Season 9, was very amicable. That he had a lot of knowledge, and he was willing to share it, very like an encyclopedia. Not, this is my perspective, or if he did, it's like, this is what I know, this is what I've seen, this is what is. So it was constantly like a Q&A. He was very much like a Paolo Google to Alexa. That Alexa lost access to because of her associations, that information would invariably go to help a bad as he described it, a bad or destructive power. And then he's McGonerson's. He showed up briefly, and for the last time in Season 8, with Solus at the Craver ritual, and Solus left with Palo.
Mm-hmm.
That is Palo. He is your Gandalf Elminster Wizard of Light sort of version of Aurora's, but that comes with being very thinks he has the answer and doesn't really ask your opinion on it, just does it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember, because I think the biggest thing Paolo, depending on how you see him, has a very big air of judgmental.
Yeah.
Because he has that knowledge in there. So I just very vividly remember Season 7, when we were playing completely different characters. I was playing Cass, and Sim was playing Laura.
And that whole entire thing.
Otis playing Gabe, and we came across Paolo, and we had just killed a Celestial, or we thought we'd killed like a part. We thought we did. There was like a whole thing, and that was the only thing he had seen of us, was that we had just killed this being, and so he did like a test to see if we were worthy, like if we actually had the right thing in mind, or if we really were malicious. And it was like an immediate judgment, and only Cass passed the test. So then I know like Alara, also maybe the player as well, had like a big issue with that. I was like, well, who is he to judge what we, like, if we're worthy to see him? Like, no one could see him unless they passed that test. And that is a thing that he does kind of commonly, where he can just make himself not visible to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like he's out there in the world, he like might be right next to you, but you can't see him. Like I think he's very cautious with who he shows himself to and who is aware of his existence. And listening to his backstory, it probably goes a lot to like the knowledge he has and the power that may be seeing him or knowing about him, what that actually has.
It's an interesting dichotomy, right? So with Paolo, it's a bit of, I have all that power and I have the burden of the responsibility of how I utilize that power. Like everything that comes out of the power that I wield is my problem. And then you put constructs around that to, I don't know, be okay with it, or for it to be okay in the world. And then you've got Gig, who has all this power and almost cryptically uses it in ways that is difficult to even understand. And in Season 8, they're seen like bickering like a married couple, like about their way that they just live their lives, but they're clearly still very very good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just like friends, maybe not friends.
Yeah,
friends. Okay.
It's hard to imagine like how they would even be friends, but having that origin together and growing apart and together, there's like this constant that they are, as most that the two of those creatures could be friends with each other are.
And then like something especially with Paolo is he's very stoic, and he kind of embodies the idea of the burden of knowledge. Like he has all of this. He won't ever. He rarely lies. Like I don't think he ever lies.
Yeah, if he does lie, it's not like some sort of impossible. Generally, it's the DM is messed up, but he does not lie.
So it's like the idea of, and that's why, like he's just very stoic, and Alexa does not. She hides emotions. However, she handles her emotions. What Paolo is what she strives to be. Like she just has this thirst and this pride in knowing all this information, and the more information she has, the better a decision she can make. So she just sees him as this this person that is what she wants to be, like all that information, and being able to make those decisions like very definitively based on that knowledge. Like that is something that she strives for. So that's why I think for them, like it was a very amicable thing, because like his mannerisms, it didn't concern her. It didn't question. Like she's like, no, this makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can understand this.
And it was alluded to in a few different times. Like, well, why don't you do this and that? And it's like, well, I know why. Like, part of this comes to the degree of divination, and it's a very magical world. But the Marvel series has like Captain Marvel. It's like, yeah, well, I don't protect Earth because it's got so many superheroes. And Paolo's thing is like, yeah, well, I have to be everywhere. and there's just one of me.
Yeah.
And although that statement, I have to be everywhere, that's very personal. He doesn't have to be. He decides that's the best use of what he has, especially with the guilt that he still carries for all the damage he has done to the world. Even though he's still a good being, like he can't shake the fact that he's responsible for this stuff.
Right.
And does not want to make it worse, hence all these tests. It's like if I'm spending all of my time trying to make the world better because of my actions, I shouldn't create actions that make the world even worse. I have to go do that too.
Yeah, and I think it kind of, because like there's choices that characters make, and I know I always kind of like allude to the fact that because of Alexa's decision, that's what got Gabriel imprisoned, but it goes along the same lines of Paolo's decision with Craver, where he was making that decision off of like he can see the trajectory, he knows where it's going to happen, like this is the only option. That was what she felt with Gabriel, like she saw this power, and her biggest thing is like the only option for many people not to die is to have him, contained, not realizing what that would then kind of go into, like with the thing with
and the grand irony
Nova
behind that is, that's the same thing that
probably made the world worse off.
That's what got Gig shot. Like that exact mentality, it plays itself over, and it's a really common theme in Arhor'ha, that the same story ends up playing itself out with different actors and different things, and it's then suddenly justified a different way, but really the same progression exists. Like the same melody, the set of chords still are being played out, just different instruments.
Yeah, like it kind of goes to the idea of they saw Gig as this big threat. If they hadn't shot him, what would have happened? Like if they hadn't shot him with, like, would he have made this
conversely, what if Paolo didn't wait and say after being shot and acted sooner? Would Pisces not have had that happen? There's just no way of, for most characters, there's no way of knowing. Paolo and Gig have some insights that are part of their characters.
Yeah, and there's like kind of the logic behind it. There's just like a lot of thinking into it. Like, Alexa thought that like, okay, having Gabriel contained is going to be the best option for the world to be safe. But there's like a couple factors that she didn't put in, which it happens. Like she has blind spots. She won't ever admit to them, but she has them. Because now the elves have the gauntlet, and I think she always had a thought in her mind that Gig was going to come and save him, because she saw that connection between him and Gig, and she does not like Gig. She is,
but she wants to use Gig.
She wants to understand Gig.
Yeah, it's Alexa's big plot point for the next season, season 9, is especially I guess in light of finding out what happened to Gabriel, because it took her Sherlock-like deductions, and the outcome was not what she expected.
Yeah, and so now it's like she thought she was doing the best thing, and now it looks like it was the worst of the two options. Like, there's no way of knowing if this is going to end better than it would have if she had just continued to help, shelter Gabriel from the elves. Like, what that would have gone to. So it's an interesting, kind of idea of how things are circling around.
The levels of irony and coincidence and like things we're playing here is just phenomenal. Because in Alexa trying to understand Gig, Gabe was, well, in my eyes, I feel like Gabe understood Gig, but it's the thing of knowing but not knowing, because you can feel and sympathize with someone, but the logical aspect of it,
empathizing,
he didn't get.
Not sympathizing.
Yeah. So he understood emotionally how Gig was doing, but he didn't understand the logic behind it. And that was just kind of a reoccurring thing, like, oh, hey, what are you doing? Chaos? He's like trying to figure out a language to speak with Gig in. And for the most part, it was kind of successful, except for when it wasn't successful, but I'm detracting.
So to kind of like tie a bow on the Paolo thing, the only other events that aren't truly like season 9 noteworthy, but they will be as we talk about other characters.
Oh.
So we mentioned in season 5, Slayers, he showed up to fight a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He just kind of came out of nowhere, like
Like he does.
It's very typical to how Paolo seems to appear in these seasons, is that no one summons him, no one asks him to be there. He's like, this is where I need to be. That's a dragon I need to shoot down from the air.
Sid has realized something.
Yeah, it is totally not related to what you're talking about, but okay, go ahead.
Well, do you wanna unball that lightning? I was just gonna go ramble for a second. Go ahead.
She's just like, I do.
Okay, all right. So go way back to the whole Jacob Dragon thing. All right, listen, hear me out. All right, D&D Dragon is about treasure in their lair, and Jacob collects shit, right? Like cool stuff. That's all. Just saying. Just saying.
So I will say that in Arhor'ha, none of the dungeon masters here do things lightly. There's normally a degree of reasons, and if we find out we fuck up, like, oh, there's an inconsistency, we'll back it up. But there are no retcons, so we're really good at improv and making a reason forward. So,
Also,
God, that never happens.
yeah.
Yep. And then like you could also go into the like once you realize that it's in your face, kind of the thought that I was having is his name. But that's just where my brain went. Yep.
So wow, you can clip it to 242, like Buck being really condescending. My bad. Now, where were we with Paolo? So Paolo shows up when Paolo shows up to shoot down a dragon. So it's like no one summoned him, no one asked him to be there. If the idea of Ex Machina Incarnate did exist in Arhor'ha, I think that you'd see like Paolo's face just holding Panger, because he just appears in the most random of times, but in the most dire of need, kind of like what was it, Gandalf when they're the Battle of Helm's Deep, very much like that. It's like generally we don't do Ex Machinas very much, but when it does, it appears. A wizard is never late. He appears exactly what he needs to. That is stereotypical Paolo. He's like, yep.
Yeah.
Didn't ask. He's like, I didn't ask you. He's like, don't need you to ask anything. This is where I want to be, and this is what I'm gonna do. Peace. The irony being he's becoming more and more like the Celestials that had that exact mentality when they like broke up Freeport. I digress. So he shot down Vine and was responsible for grounding him and then saying, yep, my next step is to do this. Like he's oddly respectful of people's free will, but not to the point of letting it get in the way of what he's doing. Like, even when Sin was like, hey, I did this, he didn't like stop Crabber from breaking the bonds. But is like, now I have other things I have to do. He just does things.
Yeah.
He drinks and he does
in season 6, is there anything that pulls in Steve Nunn for season 6? I don't think so, other than the fact that he really reinforced New Haven. And he was generally just being a helpful guy with when they needed help from Paolo. But he didn't do a whole lot. Oh, he was at the battle defending the Targaryen Manor.
Yeah.
He was involved there. He season 7, so that's Wayfinders. You mentioned it with Sagittarius and Felling and that, and the whole entire "You Can't See Me, You Jerk," and season 8 with Sin, Craver, and Alexa, and then like doing like an Adventure Time sort of parody thing in Text RP with Gig. I think it's Paolo. Bo's on Paolo. He's McDunn. He's just Gandalf.
Yeah.
I'll pass this back to you, Alexa. I know we're currently at 2 hours and 44 minutes. What are some others that you'd want to kick? I think we have enough, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm trying to like go on a mixture of like heavy, intense lore and pulling it back to like a little bit lighter. But the next person I want to go to, it's lighter, but it also is very heavy on the Buck assistance.
Yeah, I think the remaining 2, it's going to be me talking a lot. So I'll lean on everyone to to keep me pertinent with the encyclopedia that is my brain in this world.
So I'm gonna go with the later that is gonna lean on you. The last I know we're gonna cover is gonna be Ford and Ty are the last two that we're gonna look at. And I'm gonna go to Ford because there's not as much lore there. He has not been as woven through the time, so it's a little bit lighter. Ty, I can at least help fill in a good chunk with Ty.
Sure. So I'll start with Ford by saying that Ford came about with season 7, which had 2 campaigns, one of which was Relic Hunters. So Ford was brought together when we talked about Jacob White for creating a Warforged. Now, a Warforged in this one, and we have a picture reference that's in our Discord for like how tall are some of these people? Like how big are they?
Too tall.
Ford answer is really just the answer is too tall. He's too damn tall. Big. You know,
he cannot go.
He cannot go in. It's very comical watching him like, oh, I'm gonna go in a room. Ford, you're coming in like he can't fit. Like there's just not a door built for him like that. He'd create the door.
He needs a behemoth gate.
So he normally stands outside. It's like, are you coming inside? I was like, no, I've accepted my fate as being just a big boy. He's a Warforged. He's made for assault. Before Freeport was completely criscooshed. So going back with Palo, I mentioned that Angels went crazy and went to smite Freeport. Well, at that point in time, there were Warforged, and Ford was one of them. So Ford was present when Angels were just saying, it's time to wipe Freeport off the face of Arhor'ha. He technically did not make it out alive. He was responsible for protecting and being a part of the Thatcher family. So they paid for him. They had him built. You know, we're talking about the era where Gig was making a lot of things of soul. So he was constructed highly because of like soul energy. So he's a sentient creature. He is a Warforged. Went out and did piracy with the Thatchers. Not exactly a great person. The idea of quote protecting is kind of funny, and you think about tiefling culture, so it's more like, I need to make sure you come back alive. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's my only. That's the closest the word protecting means. But he's also a big boy, so he's well suited to take the hits. There's a prose. I think it's Hearts of
Fire and Steel.
Fire and Steel. Hearts of Fire and Steel is a prose. It's heart wrenching. Don't read it unless you want to be sad at the end. But
That's like the moral of all the prose.
I mean, I have aimed to write happier prose, but they just never get priority. There's a very nice set of prose with like Leon and Clyde, but you know, it just never seems to get written. I digress. I ramble.
Well, I write happy things when you can have depression.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet sort of world. The Ford and some unnamed Thatcher children are attempting to escape Freeport as it's basically being shelled by angels from above and divine energy. Thank you, Chris. So it's the idea of like who makes it out, who doesn't, and it's very realistic. Like the idea of like mortar shells, where like he wasn't the only Warforged that was there. One was much more magic oriented and Tudor-esque, and he gets like obliterated. One of the children was present when the cannonade hit, so she has like PTSD, and she's very shaken by like this idea, like her worst fears are coming to life, and Ford is there, basically like, okay, well, I guess it's time to leave you. I guess you're dead weight, and much like you'd see with the Thatchers, like Sin, she's like, screw you, and it's like, there, we can use this. Get angry. I can use anger. I can't use sadness. And then she kind of like comes to a realization that her emotions were unmanaged, and he kind of tricked her into being angry to focus on what was important, which was surviving, because tieflings in that culture were very good at one thing, surviving. As survivors, they make it out, and it's like this really heartfelt moment where he's like the same things, like, oh yeah, well, survival is what's important in our culture, so I'm gonna hand over these 2 tiefling kids and walk out there without full knowing between someone that doesn't understand how tieflings work or their culture work, that to an angel like, oh, good, you're just an automaton. I'm glad that you're following your directives here. Which, side point, like Celestials used Warforges a lot in the earlier eras. So I don't think I've ever dropped that lore. So from their mind, they're like, "Oh, great! I'm glad that they're being properly constructed, just as they should." And they're in very in immutable minds. They're like, "Great, that's exactly what a Warforged should be doing. Thank you for handling over these tieflings," but not knowing that they're more complex creatures than that. And they have a very silent head nod conversation to each other, the tieflings and Ford, and he doesn't make it out. He gets the kids far enough away, and then self detonates on the angel, and that's the end of Ford. Fast forward 100 years. Jacob White has scoured enough stuff to put him together, and part of that, which goes in Relic Hunters, is how his core end up being constructed. So Ford does something very, I wouldn't say horribly unique, because large Warforged that fall overseas would have to be the bottom of the ocean. They're not swimming. You're going the bottom of whatever body of water that is. So they're equipped with very basic cores that would magnetize them to a part of the ship. It's like a barnacle. So they wouldn't lose it, and then they could winch them back on shores, because this Ford weighs a lot. They're very big boys. What's different...
Cannot emphasize enough.
Cannot emphasize how big Ford is. I'm going to constantly say it, because he is huge. We will take another picture of the difference of the characters in the minis. He's just big. But the way his core worked once Jacob reconstructed him had more than just, I can attract myself to this thing like two magnets. That it had more implications when it had to do with souls and magic in general, which is in two wavelengths. So at Relic Hunters, he started coming to understand how his core, which is kind of his soul, how his core functions, which allows him to split things or combine things, either resonate with them or deconstruct them, build them together or break them down. So it was very interesting to see that sort of relationship grow. And I think there was one part with Trash in his adventures where he just did a very Paolo-like thing. He's very Warforged, hey, this is how I work. These are my directives. I don't act completely on impulse. I work off of a series of laws, because he's still a Warforged. And it's cool, my friend's in danger. I'm going to take the danger away. I'm going to rip the infernal part out because it's killing my friend. My friend's going murder hobo. And then Trash is hey, that's an important part of me. So it's you need to ask permission. That's a boundary. So he's learned the idea of he can't just act. He needs to consider people's feelings a bit more. Their identity more. But still struggles with that because his basis is I'm set to do certain things, kind of like Paolo. But I respect people's boundaries. Mm-hmm. It's this interesting balancing act. So that's all in Relic Hunters. He's out on the far seas. He's going off on adventures. He's meeting really interesting, quirky characters like Savage and all that. And he's building upon who is Ford? What is Ford doing? As it relates to Season 9, eventually the Relic Hunters come to a point where they return to Arhor'ha because there's a few problems that they have to address that only resources in Arhor'ha have. The core that I mentioned is kind of quirky. It's also very unstable. It's eroded. Things that they didn't expect that perhaps Jacob did. That's why he wasn't so worried about him going. And Ford kind of thought, I don't care about Jacob because you can't stop me. I'd like to see you try. I'm a big boy. So they both think that they have a one-up on each other. Ford comes back looking for sort of maintenance. He takes some things to help with, but ultimately gets entangled with the Gate series group to get some answers or to get some assistance. Now, there is a certain point in time where it's discussed they need Crystallis crystals, which is the component that's eroding in him, which is a very rare component, but also one that multiple people need. Trash, who's with them, Trash Panda, needs it to help his friend. Roya needs it to help two of her friends, one being Tiny Fang and the other being Cedric. I don't think anyone else, so everyone needed one, and the group that found them, which was Sin, Alexa, I don't remember who else went besides those two. but they needed the Crystallis crystal that they knew was there to help with Crabber's situation.
I think no, Gabriel. No, not Gabriel. I can't remember.
I was NPC'd.
Right. Yeah.
He was there, but in NPC state. So Gabriel, as the character, was present. So everyone got a good whiff of the Freeport area again, and like the sad state of affairs that it is. There was something, I can't remember when exactly it was revealed that Sin's last name was Thatcher, but Ford seemed to know.
It was. He asked questions. I remember when they were in Freeport that led.
Yeah, he just asked like what my last name was, and I told him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Sin was like, I don't know, or did know. I can't remember how that ended.
I knew, but I was just like, why do you like? I was very like. I remember like not wanting to actually like say.
So contextually, why that was so important to Ford was that as part of his adventures in the Relic Hunters, they reached a place of death, a room of necromancy, and he had lost part of his new family, which was Cedric, to this room of necromancy. And to go in there and to move forward past that room, you had to give something up. Magic has a cost. So he, being the person forward, is like, great, well, it's your temple, I sacrifice you. He's like, yeah, that's not how that works. So Jane, thank you for that image. He's a big boy.
Yep. Big boy.
So instead, it was actually something that he had ran into earlier in the same temple, which was either an illusion or an awareness of that the people that he was responsible for, his family, and his core is like family is very important to him. That's how he was built to be and chose to be, was that like his father, who was like James Thatcher, he's dead. Anne Thatcher, like the matron of the house, she's dead. Found out that she was having a kid. That kid's dead. He's kind of like running off this general hope that the kids that he thought he saved like made it, but there's no guarantee about that. And then he finds out in that room that like James is willing to give one last hurrah to help out Ford because, you know, they're family. Family is very important to the Thatchers. And he's like, yeah. It's like, well, you know, we're not great people, so what we do is we help each other out. It's like, well, you know, I'm dead. There's not much I can do to help out, but I can help out here. And then it's like, well, I'll pay this down. I think that we can do this. And it's not just him that went. It was James. It was Anne. It was the kid. It was like all the Thatchers. So it was like this big, like they didn't see Ford as an object, that he was a part of family and they're helping family out. But that also meant that there were any idea of the Thatchers were gone. Like his one purpose in life was gone, and like he died for that, gone. So to find out that Sin was a Thatcher, it just blew his mind. So he's like becomes this like very overprotective, like big giant person, but struggling with respecting boundaries.
Like literally just never leave Sin alone.
Never leave like, Sin alone. It's like I want privacy. It's like I hear what you're saying, but
one of my favorite moments in Relic Hunters. It's a good moment.
It's a good moment. There were really good moments in Relic Hunters. And Ford, it's interesting because the precursor to that, which is like seeing people die, was like how do people process grief. Ford was like, okay, I'm not going to be sad for the sake of being sad. That's not who I am. I acknowledge that they are gone, that I'm in the future now. It's like, this is sad, but I have other people who depend on me. And then later on to be like backhanded with, oh, we're dead, but we still care about you. It's interesting part of his journey. So he's can't express emotion. Very Pallas. Yeah. He can't express emotion. He's not built to express emotion. The big kick is like his monotone laugh is like ha 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 ha. You can't really tell if he's being sincere or not, but he's very, very emotional. It's like he's writing like a children's book and he likes kids. But he then beats the crap out of things. He punched a god. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Several
people get punched by him. But yeah, he likes kids. And he likes Sin and likes the idea of Thatchers and families. He's a very dichotomy character. He shows up in season 8 and in season 9. In season 8, he shows up from that finding out Sin's like, cool, well now I have another reason here to be around, and now I've got an old family that's now a new family and a new family. It's just a huge thing.
Yeah.
And he's very attached to Sin, yet knows that Sin's got to go jump through these gates that he can't go into. And he's like, well, Sin's getting ships. Like, great, I'm going. Okay. So he's just constantly around Sin.
I have found family. She cannot leave me now.
And they have this kind of like, I think Sin and Ford get along pretty well. They're very direct. Like, Sin will say something, and I remember just Ford just calls her out on it. Like, no, you're acting like a little. It's like, shut up, Dad. I'm not.
Like, all right, metal bucket.
Yeah. You just settle down and let me get away with this.
Interesting enough, though, is because he did live with tieflings. He also understands how tieflings work in a way, and he
does.
Like, I mentioned this about Gig, but like I recall Ford also being like gung ho about just go beat things.
Yeah.
Just go like do you kind of thing too.
Yeah, his like the idea you come back and you see in person, you come back alive, and that's all we expect, not how to live your life. Tieflings are very passionate, chaotic creatures, and that scares the crap out of people. Plus, like, you have infernal blood, so I mean, there's that too. There's some basis for the fear, and in Arhor'ha, tieflings and specifically elves are very feared races because of how they choose to live their lives.
Yeah.
But Ford is very accepting of that, whereas the rest of the world is very persecutive to it. And he had a moment with Alexa. Was like, Alexa knows what Alexa knows, but she didn't live in that era. And Ford was like, no, you have a lot of misconceptions about how tieflings work, or how Freeport worked, or how that culture worked. It's like none of us think that we're good people. In fact, because we know we're not good people, we know we're going to go to Avernus. We're going to hell afterwards, but we're going to go in with a fistful of gold and a knife.
Yeah, that was like, I know we unfortunately didn't get a chance to like text RP or RP it for like Alexa and Ford, but like at least I do like to think for Alexa, she's at least open to hearing. Like, if you have different knowledge, please tell me. Like, this is like, she is going purely off of the books, and the books did not put Freeport in a positive light.
No, the victors write history, so they definitely made Freeport out to be this imminent threat to open a portal to the abyss, even though that's demons and not devils. But to common people, it's just angry people that go rawr and eat your kids.
It's all the same to them.
So that's a lot of Ford. I don't think I've missed anything, but anything that you want to cover down on gaps?
Well, yeah, and that's what I think I actually want to specifically go to Ode for that, because he was the DM for when Ford was created. Like, for the most part, I've been trying to stick away from player characters, because it's more of like NPCs we're going to see. But Ford was just a player character that is an NPC for this session. So yeah, is there any like gaps that you want to fill in, Ode, or like your impressions, anything like that for Ford?
Well, I would say in all of Relic Hunters, Ford's journey was, to me, very difficult to craft, because I have this character who was really built back up, and all of their most of their weight, emotional weight, is in the past. And Ford, as a character, he's very like, let's move forward kind of mentality. Always in the present, don't think too much in the past, or else, people die. And so I thought it was actually very interesting seeing how Ford reacted. He's has this new family now with Cedric, Ildry, Trash, and Roya, but then he's confronted with his past again during the temple. But I think my favorite moments that I hope will be seen in Season 9 are his moments of self-reflection. Like, there was a time when he was on the beach on Tri-Mount Island with the Strigoforms.
Beach moment after he kicked someone in the water.
And
that was a good moment.
Well, all the beach moments, a lot of Ford's, I think some of his like little growth moments that make big waves are when he's near the coast.
Is it like long walks on the beach?
Kinda, yeah.
There was a moment when he was a coastal Freeport on the coast. He would spend a lot of time on a ship. He's got some affinity with water.
There were moments where he would carry Roya on his back, and they had their conversation. His conversation with Greenheart, which I thought were pretty good.
Oh, Greenheart! I can't believe I overlooked that guy. I love him.
He's good.
He's quirky.
We're talking about Ford.
He's quirky. It's good quirky.
I want to just go into Greenheart now. But there were moments with Ford when he was talking with Greenheart, he was talking with Roya, when he turned his vibration, when his resonance all the way to high, and he basically created like a time stop kind of effect where everything was just floating around, the water was being parted, and then there was a time he kicked Savage into the water because just going back to Ford being like,
well, that was interesting because
he
you couldn't tell he was upset, but he's like, "Oh, it's okay, little buddy. We'll just walk it off." Mate, he's like, "Yeet! I am mad."
Yeah, I think Savage. What you think? What would you think, Buck? Savage was kind of a not really an influential figure, but one of
Savage
like an eye-opening.
No. Yes. So I mean, without a doubt, Savage and Greenheart and even Hooper, like there were non-player characters that Ford came across during the Relic Hunter series that shaped some, and Trash, of course, the player character that shaped his way of thinking about things. Like Savage was very a man of action, so like there's some resonance to Ford's way of thinking too. But what Savage brought to Ford was that there were still, even though you're a man of action, you live in the present, look to the future, that if you don't occasionally recenter yourself, you're gonna fall apart, which really falls into the idea that his core is, falling apart. So he thinks about those things and those lessons is from a fellow like monk that fights with his like fists and energies. Hooper too, it's like the idea that he respects wizards. He respects people that have knowledge. So the way he gets along really well with Alexa, it's because she's very knowledge driven, and he knows that he's not that smart. His common phrase is like, "I may be a big dumbass warforged, but these are my feelings about things because my thoughts ain't so great." He's not stupid. He kind of makes light of it self-deprecatingly, but he knows that he's not the smartest person in the group. But his thoughts have value, and sometimes it's just speaking with wisdom and conviction that helps bring smarter people to bring their ideas to the table. And that's something he learned with working with Hoopert more, that Hoopert had all these good ideas, but sometimes he was a bit too reserved to bring them forward. And the group was rough, so sometimes they really bashed his ideas, and he's like, "Hey, that was the wrong idea, but bringing it forward was the right idea. It speaks to how he lives in the present versus the past. But the past still happened." And that's the part where it kind of requires that Savage-like inflection. With Greenheart, it's the idea that, some of the stuff that exists from Tiefling culture still exists, where there's that uneasy alliances, and you can be a bit different, it's okay, and then boundaries from Trash. So Ford, as a player character in Relic Hunters, had a lot of growth, and we have a very interesting follower system, because characters or actors that exist in the world, they'll continue to exist, and nothing's more frustrating than saying, I can't bring you along because I don't have a PC slot for you, or I don't want to modify the way this works. We give them like follower abilities, so they become someone who's there and allows the player characters to be in the fore of the decision making and all that process, but they can contribute and help a little bit.
Yeah.
So when characters like Ford or Perdita make their way in, they're really just augmenting what the players are doing.
I think it's gonna be interesting because I feel like inevitably the season 9 group is gonna meet up with Gig, and Gig's an Infernal. So having that relation back to Trash and seeing firsthand what demons are like with Dakota and Baphomet and all that, and then seeing the opposite of like, oh, this is like the epitome of an Infernal. Well, I think I prefer Trash or something similar to that. I'm interested.
And the
what that
interesting thing that I haven't gotten around to writing or even hint dropping about is that Ford and Gig know each other.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, effectively, you couldn't have created a Warforged without Gig, so yeah.
What do you... Explain!
I would, but we only have enough time to go through.
No!
Yeah, because now the rest of the time is for Ty.
Well, before we segue away and being bucked by it's interesting. Well, yeet. Is there anything from Ford that
other than that definite hint drop that will not be
explored other than Ford and Gig know each other? Yeah, and may have had a conversation at Nexus.
Why? Why'd you do this?
I mean,
during the Gate series?
Yeah.
Oh my god! I hate you!
Aurora Adventures. If you're not hating Buckland, then you're not doing it right.
You're the worst.
Around. No one's gonna.
How does it feel knowing you met the Pirate
You're the
King?
worst.
He's the Pirate King. Both the Pirate King.
Pirate King. Yep. Gig's other name for Gig is the Pirate King.
God damn, he has too many names.
He does.
Really?
He has too many.
Yeah, Gig's the Pirate King.
What?
Gig is the
The
Pirate
Pirate King.
When?
I mean,
Pirate
he
King
probably,
of Freeport.
Because
he probably gave
Freeport.
himself that name.
So like the idea of like the leader of Freeport is the Pirate King, and like anyone could be the Pirate King, but clearly it was Gig.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And I just imagine him happily sitting on his throne, and be like, "I'm the Pirate King."
I mean, not
Oh
too
my
far off
God.
if you think about how it ended with when I mentioned with Paolo. I mean, he was on Skyport.
Yeah.
It's another thing for me to draw. It's fine.
Another thing is Gig on a throne.
Okay.
So any
With the
gaps
pirate hat, yeah.
that sparked to mind as I was going through forward. The big thing for season 9 is to remember he has cares a lot about like family, has a big like affection level for Sin in a very tiefling way, respects knowledge in the Alexa way, has a history with Gig, and the way his core works, the resonance engine that's inside of him, that is also very quickly deteriorating.
But didn't Alexa send out for the crystals?
Yeah, it's kind of
message?
interesting when you're trying to spend money to get, what is it, very hard to get objects that people hoard and collect.
Why did you do? Why?
Oh, you son of a bitch! You son of a bitch! No! I can't wait for season 9.
I mean, it's a time like, why are you like this? Why?
Stop connecting dots and use a crayon, damn it.
I can't. I need to get like a bulletin board in my room, you know,
With
where
the
you put
threads?
the string and
yeah, like a series of unfortunate events. Yeah, I'm with it.
That's my head.
That's
all
it.
the
That is
time.
Ode's head. That's
honestly.
fair. All right.
Makes sense.
Well, those are the highlights to take away outside of this is Ford. He's a big boy. Thank you, Alexa, for the size reference picture. He is
You're
big. He fights with his fists and with chains. And there's a nice little combo ability with Sin that I'm very excited to see that play out, because just the mental image of that just sounds metal AF. Okay, we can segue to the next one. What you said you want to end on Ford, Alexa?
On Ty.
Oh, yeah. See, that's why I'm looking to you. So ending on Ty.
I know. That's what I'm here for. So, and this is something because Ty probably won't show up in season 9. We don't know if he will or won't, but he has a tie with a lot of the characters, and he's someone that we've referenced a lot as we've kind of gone through them. So I do want to kind of go through his journey, as he has been in the campaign since season 1. And he, when I look at kind of characters' journeys and like people's thoughts on them, has had the biggest shift, I think, overall with everyone, like close to Gig in terms of shift, but I think like his shift is actually a little bit stronger than Gig's. And that's because, I mean, I love Ty, but for the first 6 seasons, I hated Ty with a strong passion.
Same.
Like, he was the worst. So I just kind of want to go into him because he's affected everyone, almost everyone that like is going to be going into this world in terms of kind of what's going on. So with Ty, he is a member of the Targaryen family, and I'll take the brunt of explaining Ty to give Buck a break.
I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go a lot into the history of it, and I'm going to kind of pull from you guys from like any kind of impressions that you have or how your characters have interacted with him. So like the history of Ty, he was part of the Targaryen family, and as you can maybe surmise, you might not be able to, but Targaryen, the Silver Dragon, and the Targaryen family, who are Silver Dragonborns, they are the family that were like the champions that fought for Targaryen. as they were doing that battle. Now, something that like we learned a little bit later on that we didn't have context into until season 6 is for the Targaryen's family to be that leader and kind of control their champions and really take on this fight. There's a trait that they had that helped fuel, you know, their abilities, and that was anger and rage, essentially, that was inside of them. So the way that Ty handled it, because he was supposed to be the one taking charge and he had this rage, he came across him very much as a villain in the first couple seasons because of the only information that we had on him. I played his sister, so I had, you know, some background knowledge, but to her, like, he was really just like a huge dick that had a lot of anger. Like, that was the only side that she ever saw of him. We found out that he a fit of rage essentially took over him with the Green family, which is a family that, you know, helped take care of the Targaryens as they were growing up. Essentially, were like in charge of the, you know, the manor and really just like helped raise them. The rage took over and he killed 2 of them, 2 of the sons, and it created a revenant, Talion, who wanted to kill Ty because he saw him as like the man that killed his sons, or has killed himself and his brother. So like there's that aspect of it, and the big thing that we learned about Ty is that a way of him blowing off steam is going into the fighter pits and murdering people. Like usually it's just like, oh, like we're gonna all fight. Like he would just go in, he would fight off multiple people that were just in there to fight, and he would just kill people, and that was how he blew off steam, was by murdering people. So there was a lot of this, like, oh, like Ty's like this really bad guy who just like kills people. He just has all this anger, and he just like he was very much a villain for the first couple of seasons. Now, unfortunately, because of that, you know, mindset, we didn't fully understand how things worked. Io kind of turned the populace against him during one of those arena fights because her friend was also in the fighting pit, and she thought that Ty was going to kill her. So she turned the public against Ty to save her, thinking that, yeah, like, this is the right thing. Like, he's a bad guy. I'm going to turn everyone and, you know, save her. And it actually hurt a lot more because later on we find out that Ty actually, you know, loved his sister and wanted to protect her. And so seeing her actually turn on him was a rough thing for him to see. So then he kind of does a different path. He doesn't want to take charge of the champions. He doesn't want to fight this fight for Tark. He doesn't want to be told what to do. So he decides he's going to go about it a different way, which is kind of a theme that we've seen, you know, with Paolo and how they create Gig. Like, also happens with Willis, their other brother, of like trying to find a way around this great game that keeps happening. So Ty's method of it is to get mercenary groups, create an army to fight against the cult of Giggurath, which is kind of like another group that's helping the Giggurath power. So he's like, but he didn't tell anyone what he was doing. He just left and started collecting an army. So from a player standpoint, all you're seeing is your brother that's killing everybody just because he's angry is now also making an army. What the fuck is he doing? Like, we had no idea. So we're just like, well, shit, like, I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something really not good and something really sketchy in the background. And we come to find that he's creating an army to fight against the cult of Giggurath to make Giggurath essentially less powerful. Like, if they're not pulling from it, then they have a better chance. And it's a different way of trying to fight this great war that keeps happening, this great game. So Ty is gone and he's getting everything together. And we come across season 6. This is all happening in the background. He's not always a focus. Like, something to keep in mind with Arhor'ha is characters are always they're always exist in the world. Even if that season isn't focusing on them, that doesn't mean that they just stop doing what they're doing. They're still doing things. So it was like, what, 2 seasons that we didn't focus on him. Maybe like 1 season that he wasn't there, but he was still building this army. And we come across season 6, where each of the player characters essentially have a test or a trial that they have to complete to become a champion to fight for Targ. And Nas, who was, Ode's character, his trial actually gave us backstory into Tai. So you kind of learned that growing up, all he was taught was the duty that he had, and all he did was training. He does show up briefly in season 4.
Yeah.
And that's when he was starting to collect his army. So that's when we heard that he was collecting the mercenaries.
Like a footnote. Yeah.
Yeah, like a footnote, like that's when he was collecting his armies. But in, we get the backstory into Tai, which is that he always had this anger, and all that his dad ever taught him was to train. He never really had fun. He was always set to duty because he was going to be in charge of this next great game, so he had to be ready. So he really couldn't have fun. His dad was very harsh on him, and just everything about duty. Like, I don't know if he had much of like the love feeling or anything. Like, he was supposed to protect his family beyond a doubt, and that was what he was supposed to do. And this rage inside of him, it's not like I'm just angry. It's something so pure that like he couldn't contain. Like, when something like that takes over you, it's not like a choice. You're not killing people because it's fun. You're doing it because like this thing has taken over you, and it gives like this different aspect into his mindset. Like, he harped on protecting his family. Like, Io had a very easy life, but part of that was because Tai was right behind her, essentially going to, if anyone wanted to say anything, I'd be like, I will kill you. And I've been like a joke. I'll kill you. And I think people would believe it of Tai. Like, oh yep, he would kill me. So we kind of get that insight, and it just puts a different spin on the character. He's no longer like this big evil guy. Like, there are reasons behind it. That's why he, does what he does. The biggest thing that then popped up is going to be, it's something I haven't gone into too much detail because, again, it's a whole bunch of lore. There is this stone that the leader of the Targaryens carry for their champions, and Io had taken up the reins because Tai refused it, and Willis couldn't. And her other sister was like off getting married. So Io took control of it because she was really the only one there. And she was like, I'm going to take this responsibility and I'm going to do this. And we're just going to get this all taken care of. And it's going to be fine. But then, Tai shows up and he sees that Io is doing it. And he's like, oh no, I'll do this for you. And he essentially takes it from her. And he's like, he was trying to avoid doing this fight. And he's like, no, you can't do this. This was not meant for you. You don't have what it takes. And so he took it over. And because in his mind, he's trying to save Io. Io saw it differently. She was pissed. She's like, are you fucking kidding me? I've been like working my ass off to be worthy of this, and you just like take it away. So it was a lot of him then training Io to be prepared and actually being able to fight with the stone and do what it can do, because she had no knowledge of what any of her abilities were, anything that she was supposed to be able to do. So then it was, him essentially, ideally not wanting her to fight, but accepting that he'll take, that responsibility, or at least train her so that she knows what to do. Now they go into this big trial, and it leads them over to Phalor's trial. Yep, where they have to go, into another realm, and they are fighting. And this, unfortunately, parts of this are fuzzy. I just remember that they had a task to do over there, and we eventually found out a way to leave. And Tai was with us, and he was, trying to go across and everything. What exactly?
Because it definitely did a pullback from, because it was the exact same battlefield that you fought Vine in.
Yes.
Where there was the light side and the shadow side. Kind of
right. It was
overlapping.
the maze because we had to get Sunder.
Right. So you had like there were two copies of the maze, and one party went to the light side, one party went to the shadow side. And fun fact, they were just complete inverses of each other, and they were trying to go through that trial, which involved getting like elements, and then coming back together in the center to kind of like merge things together, which was part of Phalor's trial, was guiding people through this, like the dichotomy that was his character.
So we were doing that, and we did succeed. Now going through this, Ty was on one side and I was on the other. So they were kind of like leading each group and going through. Well, towards the end, we finally succeeded, and the gate was slowly closing, and we got everyone out except Ty, because he realized if he came over, it would destroy everything. That, you know, him coming in, it would cause like this unbalance, and it would pull everything in. And it was a rough scene where, like, I was like, no, like, I'll find a way to get you out. And he's like, this is really the only option. And Phalor has to cut the portal that, you know, connects the two worlds, and essentially cutting off her brother, who she finally understood, who she finally had this connection with. And then all of a sudden, like in a blink of an eye, like he was just gone. And so he was stuck in this other, you know, area of the world where Bologna eventually comes over. So that idea of like saving Bologna, it kind of like brings together a little bit. Like she ends up getting over there with Ty, and of course Ty is trying to get out, and Io as well is trying to find a way to get him back into the world. And it's what exactly is the area, Buck, that they are? What was the area that they were stuck in called?
They traversed a few different places. They were stuck originally in the Shadow Plane, but it was a bit of a more of a demi-plane than the Shadowfell, because it was very devoid of.
Okay.
And as there's a prose for it that involves Bologna, which you're kind of segueing to, for them to path out the minutia, the nuance behind it was they had to go from there to a place in like the expanse of the abyss and then out, because the abyss tends to like have little tendrils to get in, and it's generally a bad thing, but it is a way out. Thank you for the picture. That's like BC.
Yeah.
Sad pandas. So they both end up there, at the Bologna point. No, I'll kick back.
Yeah. So we end up there, and Phalor now has Sunder, which is a very powerful sword, and that was really the only tool to cut off that portal. So he cuts a portal, and ties in stuck in that world. And so earlier I mentioned that like me as a player and as a character, like I have a mixed feelings about Bologna, because they travel together, and I as a player and as a character was convinced that I would find a way to bring him back. I'm like, you know what, like it's fine, like I'll bring it back. Like there are ways, like we were able to get people out of like these kinds of situations. It's fine. And Bologna and Ty try to travel together, and Paolo finds a way to get them out, but then he kind of brings it up like it really can only be one of you that can come out. And Buck wrote a great prose that really goes into like they're traveling, and like as you're reading, you think that Ty is going to be the one that gets out. Like as they're going through, like, oh, like Bologna's going to be stuck behind and Ty's going to get out, but at the very end, he has Bologna get free, and he is stuck in there. So by all means and purposes, we think that he's stuck there for forever. And I definitely cried a couple times, and it's fine. Everything's fine. But what we then saw in season 7, is Ty is like the only way that Ty could get out of there was in brief moments. There were essentially like ways that he could get out for a little bit, but then he would get sucked back in. And there was only for so long that he actually could be out in the world before he got like right back into the area he was stuck. So we got to see Ty, and at that time I was playing a paladin type character, and Ty had
Troy Yeah.
Yeah, like Ty had taken down Nexus as part of his destruction of the cult of Gigareth, and unfortunately, one of my characters, the love of her life, everything, had started to fall into the cult of Gigareth, so he died at the hand of Ty. But she never, and I know it always it confused Sin at first, or first as to why she never blamed Ty for it, because she understood when you're in a battle, because she's like a fighter, like when you're in a battle, you can't choose the morality of someone right there. You can't decide like, oh well, they're fine. Like there's no way of knowing. You do what you have to do, and you go with the knowledge that you have. But she meets Ty, and he's this very militant character, and she kind of understands him, and she emulates him a little bit because he is this strong fighter, and it reminds her very much of Troy, who he did kill. And they kind of have this bond of friendship where she's like, yeah, this is great, this is this whole big thing, it's gonna be awesome. And as we mentioned earlier, he was talking with Gig. We later come to find that Gig was trying to essentially offer a way for him to not consistently, or to not move forward with a ritual that happens later, or a way for him to survive. And that's when we mentioned seeing Gig in season 7. That was the conversation he was having. Is we can make it so that you don't, there's a better fate for you. Unfortunately, Ty doesn't move forward with it because Ty does not like deals. Yeah. And especially deals with Gig. Which, weird enough, I don't know why people would want to deal with Gig.
Wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
So, wait, Gig knew that Ty was going to die during that ritual? Well, you were talking about the Atlas thing, right? For the pros?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Gig knew that was going to happen?
Yep.
Yep.
There's also something, since we learned the characters, there are three major powers if you start abstracting it: celestial powers, infernal powers, and draconic powers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they all have their sort of iconic champions of what they are, which is why they keep reappearing. Right now that we're at almost hour 4, Ty generally represents the pinnacle of the draconic powers, Paolo the celestial powers, and Gig as the infernal powers. So they constantly reappear as characters because of that, and they resonate well with the players. That's important, probably more so. But yeah, Gig knew, and it kind of goes to the idea that Gig has all this power, but it's not boundless. He might have known, but that doesn't mean he could have done anything to stop it.
And it also goes back to the why would he want to help Ty? There is always that he's a devil and he can
but how
do what he
did
wants.
Know?
Well, you guys went back into time, which is something you shouldn't do when he was there.
My brain hurts.
Yeah. It's best. It's best not to think about when you start changing fate. When you start thinking about the wish spell, and this is a complete magical meta law tangent. We generally don't try to mess with anything time oriented. And if you remember how we handled, you did this, it happened, but it's dangerous. And here, let me explain the dangers of what you're walking into.
Yeah.
Because we're definitely not a very time walk. We're not Planescape-y in that aspect. But it has happened as plot points at least once.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to hurt your head. Gig knew? Which version of Gig? At what point of the timeline did he know? So it's definitely...
No.
Aurora is confusing enough not to add in that.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, so that's what we, eventually found out that Ty, and it's an interesting concept because in a way that means that Ty also knew it was going to happen because Gig was advising him that it was going to happen. So Ty was doing all this stuff to bring himself essentially back for the right situation for him to eventually die. Spoiler alert, he dies.
Yeah, there's a place for that too, and that also is heart-wrenching.
But something that I kind of ties back to previous conversation that we had with why did Gig want to help Iolanthe? It was because of Willis, who is both Ty and Io's brother. That's also why Gig has a tie to Ty is Willis. So it's that familial connection that, yes, he knew about all this stuff, but he wanted to save Tai if he could. Because for him, it's like that like nagging feeling in the back that like your family is about to die and there may be something you can do, but what if that person won't accept your help? Like, how do you handle it? So we travel with Tai for the little times that he is able to be in the realm. And then we come across Atlas, which we have alluded to multiple times. And it was this session was particularly, a rough one, where essentially this celestial dragon was going to be brought into existence, but it needed, as Buck just mentioned, celestial power. It needed draconic, and it needed infernal, which it was Gig, Paolo, and Tai, who showed up because they were necessary to bring Atlas into the world. So they do this, great battle, unbeknownst to us. Like, we're just like, hey, everything's fine.
At this point, Alara is very distracted, dancing with bass
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah, like, that's a whole other thing. But so he does. So he partakes in this great big battle, essentially like a sense of, weirdly enough, duty, where it's like it's his responsibility to be there as a draconic power.
Yeah.
To bring back this dragon, because again, much like we've done the soul splitting, there are these two parts of a dragon that were created. We have Elo, which is kind of seen as like the potential like evil side, and then we have Atlas, which they were trying to bring into the world, which they successfully do. But it's this large battle, and at the very end, they essentially are fighting the darkness away from getting into this dragon egg. That like, as long as they can keep the darkness away, the dragon has a better chance of being good, and making like the better choices and not being this huge source of evil. And much like the Rage Against the Dying of the Light that was just posted in our lobby, there's this large evil that's coming in, and they all think that we're not gonna be successful. Like, they were like tired. A lot of people had passed away, which wasn't exactly them dying in this battle. It's an interesting battle, but it was one of those things that like Gig even said, like, we lost. Like, this is going to come in. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, just let it happen. It'll be a way. It'll be fine. And Tai just couldn't accept that. He's like, no, that's not how this ends. And he goes against this essentially huge evil to stop it from getting into the egg. And he is successful. It does not get into the egg. So the egg is purely good, which is great. But it also led to Tai in the physical plane where we saw him turning into stone.
Yeah.
So the great evil. I don't know if it was.
I don't know.
That
big,
was,
yeah.
That Reth. Yeah, it was.
Oh, that was Reth. Yeah.
So it's there's also that sense of irony that he spent his entire life trying to avoid a fight with, like, Reth on those terms, and he did it anyway.
Yep. He's like, well, fuck this. And so, Tai died, but in that moment, it split him. Is that what split him? Buck?
There's a few things that split him, starting with Iolante's wish.
Right. That all. Yeah, she meant well.
Yeah. So I mean, you have a few different fragments of Tai. The most you can make it easy by thinking that there's three of them. There is Tywin, which by having Tywin in a Hearthhome kind of was part of why he was able to pull over to the material plane, but in short spurts.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was him dying there, and Paolo's bit, and then the two splits from there. So there's kind of like three of him. And then from there, you saw at least a piece of him in the Gate series, which was like Big Angry Dragon. That Craver corrupted. There's a corrupted version of his soul, which is Ragey, and then one more. So
yes.
Tai is big boy that split 3 times.
Yep. But yeah, that was essentially where he, to our knowledge, had died. And that had like implications for like Cass. Like, she did not take that well at all. because she has emotional baggage, as all characters do. And so she took her sword, and I think they placed his statue, because he was a statue at that point, at a place where the Targaryen family couldn't see him, because that was her biggest concern. So that is a less, and he's also in the book that, Buck made a portion of him, which all goes on the witch, and that's a whole other thing. But like that overall is Ty. So everyone else, let's start with, because I see who is not muted. Sin, I'll start with you. So like, what is your experience with Ty?
Well, before I was even a player in this community, I knew you guys through Rem's game.
Mm-hmm.
So I jumped on and I was watching season six. Yeah. And I remember, I think, right, because I think you were in Duodecim and you were in a tent and you were filling out paperwork and Ty was there. And
it's paperwork, it's Duodecim.
Yeah, and I just remember, my initial view on Ty from watching season 6 was how much of an asshole he was. Like, I did not like him at all. Up until him being disguised as Tarkin. And I don't know, there's no rhyme or reason, but like, I just liked his character. And the more we kind of started to learn more about Ty and interact with him as far as Wayfinders goes, I really, really began to like him, and like just the whole ritual thing on the Starset Lake was oh boy. That was really upsetting, and the pros didn't really help at all. But it was so weird because like I feel like I didn't spend enough time with like learning about Ty, even though he was around there, and it was only for a few sessions in Wayfinders that he was there.
Mm-hmm.
But in that short amount of time, I really grew to like the character. And I remember like being like really pretty upset about that, like internally, like, oh, that did not feel good. Nope. My heart hurts. I don't like this. What have we done? No. So there's a lot of what the fuckery with that, because in the pros specifically, it's mentioned that Celestian had reached out to Ty in regard to this ritual thing. So it's just a lot of like more question marks about why, and
that's something that wasn't completely mentioned, but there is a prose that kind of goes into like the amount of pain that like being reconstructed in this world, but like missing parts, like coming out like bleeding, like not everything teleported correctly, like that whole entire fear when you think of teleportation. It's like I teleported and parts of me didn't come here, so I'm just like bleeding internally. It really hurts. But I'm here. I'm gonna claw myself up and try to like fix this problem, and that's very Ty.
Yeah.
But part of it was Celestian, who's a deity, a Greyhawk deity of space, time, and wanderers, that didn't tell him or demand him or do that whole entire I'm a god, do what I say, but kind of talked to him as a bit of an equal and saying, I'm not telling you, I'm asking you. And it's like, I'm trying to convey like why this is important to me, and I believe it's important to you. And it's like one of those things where he had options, and he wasn't so blind that he would not work with gods, but that's why I was like, well, maybe he will work with Gig, but he never did. But he worked with Celestian because he believed what Celestian was doing was right.
Yeah.
Like, it's always on, like, to some degree, on his terms.
I'm gonna cry.
It's fine. Maybe it's also maybe not.
Because he understood that with how much he loved his family, and specifically loved his sister, and he did a lot of what he did for Iolanthe Like, and you see it a bit in the prose that when he remembers that the reason why he's going through all of this isn't just because it's my terms and I'm important, because there is, I mean, he's not perfect. That definitely is part of it. He's certainly arrogant. It's a draconic thing. But the light in that rage was, like, he really wanted to protect his sister. And that's one of his earliest memories of training was, hey, you know, you don't feel like you can get up? And his father's like, just remember what you're fighting for. And it's like, here's your little baby sister. And he's like, yep, okay, got it. Back to training. I want to start as soon as possible.
Yeah. Right? It's really, God. It's really sad.
Yeah. But yeah, like, he's a character that has definitely affected, I think, everyone.
Yeah.
Throughout. Well, and then, Ode, I know you're muted, but, like, what has been your experience with dealing with Ty?
In as little words as possible, I can say that Ty is Aurora. Quintessentially, he is
Ty Arhor'ha.
the best representation of Aurora condensed into a character. Like, beyond PC or NPC, he's what I think of when I think of Aurora. A long history filled with highs and lows, and dealing with an internal conflict that shapes not only himself, but sends ripples to the rest of the world. But in the end, he's still fighting for something, and through that fight, change occurs. But he's also willing to make those sacrifices that are necessary evils and huge heart punches. But he still keeps going on.
Well said. And
That's,
the only thing I'd add to that is that, like, not only that, but he, on top of all that, the idea, like, oh, this egotism to it, but he enlists help with lots of people. Like, he's not even so egotistical that he doesn't command legions at a certain point. Inspires them to fight under his banner. I think you got to make a point. He's very quintessential. If you think Arhor'ha, Ty is like one of the first three people that come to mind.
And then Gig.
And then Gig, right? Again, and to me, Palo, and that kind of goes back to the Trinity. But I mean,
it really does. Oh my God, that's actually really creepy and awesome at the same time.
Good. And then I think lastly, we'll sit on Buck, because, like, I mean, you've been sprinkling it in here now, but is there any other thing else that you'd like to say about Ty?
Ty's awesome. He's had a very colorful story as a lore builder, as DM. It's been very fantastic to be able to construct a character that has been able to grow and have people see different shades of his growth at different points in time. Like Io hating him from the very beginning, and like even like characters like Dahlia getting all like about him, to explaining some of the social stratification in Crystallis and how the dragons work, and how dragons are a little bit in Arhor'ha than they are in, say, Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or anything like that, as the way D&D always handles dragons. Like, the question, how do you handle dragons? So bringing out how Targrin works, writing for him as one of the characters in Hearthhome. He's been, I won't say a blessing, but he's definitely been fun to write with. Across the general stroke flavor that is Arhor'ha. I'd say to keep it into season 9, because I kind of hinted that he is in season 9. That
Yep. I heard it.
What?
But I don't think it's going to be in the way that you think it is. Like, and I think that really, when I say it like that, it's like, that's very Ty. Like, he'll be involved, but typically not in the way that you expect. You expect him the way you did in season 1, 2, and well, 3 is a magical season. So 1, 2, and like 4 versus the way he was in 6.
That never was.
Versus like 7. Like, if you said, "Oh, Ty," it's like, "Oh, that asshole," and it's gonna be like, "Oh, well, he's different in this season," or I'm seeing a different side of him, because all these characters have the same level of thought and complexity, but they only matter and I stand by this, they only matter by how they reflect off the player stories. Because they'll continue to do things. But when you get to see how it relates to, as you mentioned, like Cassandra, like I really emulate him. He's very militant. He reminds me of Troy. He's strong. I kind of look up to him. It gives me a chance to think of my character. Like, would I blame someone who did that to Troy? Then like Alara and how it works Celestian. It gives a lot of bounce points for the players themselves. And Ty just seems to be universally really good at allowing that sort of light into the room.
Mm-hmm.
Gig as well. Gig's like, oh, here's your bat. Go ham.
He said you wanted to kill things. Here you go.
Oh my god. That was the best day.
Yeah.
Best day. And hey, we're pretty good on time too.
Yeah, like I was saying, like that pretty much ties up like everything. I feel like if we go into anyone else, it's gonna run over, and my brain I know is getting a little tired.
Yeah, mine as well. I'll go with some honorable mentions.
Okay.
But we're not going into them. Crabber was a character in the Gate series. Willis, we covered a little bit. You know, Iolanthi's older brother, Ty's younger brother. Great Bean, he's in Hearthhome. Iolanthi was mentioned a few times. Main character of seasons 1, 2, and 6. Celestian was mentioned. Greyhawk deity, time, space, wandering. Really cool. We've always had this inkling on like phenomenons and space, like the idea of Arhor'ha adventures, although spelled differently. Its basis came from like the sky aurora that exists, or Aurora Borealis. It's a very constant present that just paints the landscape literally and creatively. Jeremy Goldstein was mentioned. Jeremy being just sort of like a, real estate baron?
Asshole.
Yeah, he's an asshole. He's very monetary interest. At season 9-wise, that means that people like Jacob White aren't the only ones that use financial gain as a means of power. Safina was a character that showed up in multiple seasons, and he's got a super tragic story as well, but we don't have any time to go into that. And we mentioned dragons. We didn't hit on Ozymandias. And we didn't hit on Hope because I haven't mentioned it yet. So
nope.
Leave it on that.
Like there's no way to go into that because I don't know they exist.
Yepers. Gotta keep Hope alive.
On Hope? Hope.
It's fine. He's gonna do that thing where he just like gives you information but then leaves it and does not go further into it. So
don't worry.
You got it.
It'll percolate in the back of your head, and then suddenly, always.
Yeah.
Head percolation.
Yeah.
Think phrase of why are you like this? I'm like, I don't know.
Yes, why are you like
this? Why are you like this? Cool. Well, we're not sponsored by Taco Bell, but I think it's about time for celebration to T-Bell.
Good. Yeah, it looks like that kind of ties everything together. Oh god, every time.
Oh no.
Everything together. So I just want to thank everyone that listened to the stream or hung out in here. I know we had Ginger in here we have Ginger in here right now. We had Pox swing by a little bit. We've had Reaper Valentine in the lobby.
Oh yeah.
Chatting a little bit. We had Kent stop by.
He hosted us.
And he hosted us for a little bit.
Good guy, Kent.
Will WKM, who I actually don't know who that is, but hi. It's
they got the
cool to see you. You got the I am gig real quick. Congratulations. Yeah. You got that faster than anyone in the actual campaign. But yeah, and DJ Turtle, so it's great to see you guys all stop by. I hope you guys, got a little bit more information. I know we are probably gonna hop off at least stream and get some food or maybe just relax for the rest of the day. But yep, there you go, just vodka. Just drink your feelings. But I want to thank both Buck, Ode, and Sin for giving us a little bit more context in characters as we go through. And I hope you guys.
We thank you for bang up job of moderating.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're great.
Thank you. This is not a thing I do normally, but thank you guys very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, y'all.
All right.